And we are live, Chair.
Let me call to order the regular meeting for the Police Accountability Board for Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. To access this meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device using this URL listed below. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, use the drop-down menu and click on Rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. To join by phone, dial 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 826-5339-6072. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of this agenda, press star 9 and wait to be recognized. And I would like to acknowledge our land acknowledgement and move on to the agenda. Roll call and call to order.
Okay, thank you, Chair. For the record, this meeting was called to order at 6:31 p.m. I will now proceed with roll call. Chair Moore
Here in
is
spirit.
on a just cause exemption. Vice Chair Harris.
Here.
Okay, Board Member Blackaby is currently absent. Board Member Calavita. Here. Board Member Cayetano.
Here.
Board Member Leftwich.
Here.
Board Member Moses. Here. And Board Member Wilson.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum. And I would also
Excellent.
I'd like to acknowledge the staff that's present here today. On behalf of the City Attorney's Office, we have Deputy City Attorney Chang. We have Assistant to the City Manager, Carrie Arredondo. On BPD's behalf, I don't see anybody at this. Oh, we have a remote Captain Tate.
Board member Blackley did express that he found it a little bit late.
Okay. And then, of course, on behalf of the ODPA, we have Director Aguilar, Policy Analyst Berger, Investigator Gordon, Investigator Wechter, and myself, Program Analyst Jose Murillo. And did I get everyone? I believe I did. Perfect. Okay, Chair.
Thank you, Jose. This takes us to agenda item number 2, approval of the agenda. May I have a motion?
Chair, before that motion begins, excuse the interruption. We did have a request from the complainant in item 10E, which is policy complaint 2024 PR 001 to postpone the item if possible. The complainant does have another policy review that'll be presented at our next meeting. She unfortunately couldn't attend. So she would like to request that the board could table the item until she could come presently, and that's for the board's consideration.
That shouldn't be a problem. Do we have to take a vote on that, or can we just move that off the agenda for now?
It would be a motion through the approval of the agenda. It would be, again, the board retains it the motion to approve the agenda with the tabling of item 10E.
Heard.
Okay, so
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So with the motion by Board Member Calavita and the second by Vice Chair Harris. Chair, if you'd like to, I could call a roll call vote and I'll proceed with that.
Sure, let's go ahead and get it done real quick.
Okay, Board Member Blackaby is absent. Board Member Calavita?
Yes.
Board Member Cayetano?
Yes.
Vice Chair Harris?
Yes.
Board Member Leftwich?
Yes.
Board Member Moses?
Yes.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
Okay, and Board
Yes.
Member Wilson? Okay, the motion carries. Okay. Okay. Sorry, excuse me, I
Bear
was
with
taking
you.
notes. With that, we'll now proceed to public comment. As always, speakers are generally allotted up to 3 minutes, but maybe a lot of less time if there are many speakers. They may comment on any matter within the board's jurisdiction at this time. I will start with our physical attendees and then move on to those attending virtually. With that said, at this time, do we have anyone here who would like to provide public comment? Okay, and one moment while I get 3 minutes on the clock.
Thank you very much. My name is Lawson James, and I am a member of Berkeley Car Wash. I've been a member of at least 7 years. As well as other situations. I was down for about 8 days due to the fact that so many people I know from Palestine have lost family members 10, 20, 30 at a time. That combined with the temporary occupation of People's Park by the University of California has got me down quite a bit. And I ran across this statement, I think this is important. By a 19th century scholar who said, "As laws don't be bad, what good?" But that's what I begin with here. Barbed wire, the Supreme Court made a decision recently that the federal government could remove barbed wire taxes on the water, in the borders there. However, does that mean that we should ask the president to come in to remove the barbed wire containers, shipping containers on the west end of People's Park? No, we probably shouldn't do that. But should the razor wire remain there? No, it shouldn't. And at some point, it'll be taken care of, hopefully, by the same people that put in the public one, took it out later on, meaning the University of California, the region. They set money aside for this crop, good. They're gonna set some money aside to remove the barbed wire, which spares flesh, which spares clothing. It's against the international law to use them in a situation like this. It shouldn't be done. The Berkeley Police Department has a habit of attacking transsexual women. One of them was a friend of mine who's a doctor, but it's not well. Operating small vehicles that don't have obvious base markings on them. I'm sorry that we have a recent one with like tears for the people that overhead the senior friend of mine who's about 75 years old, about 5 feet tall, weighs about 100 pounds. We need to get a skill on doing that. He pushed me down once with his back game. And fortunately, me and him and everybody else at the time was also my wife, helping out who skill. Vietnam veteran type shit. I was pissed. And she calmed me down to go. However, the point is here that these snap squats should not be happening. They should not be attacking people. Senior citizens, transsexual women seem to be a target of this. Hey, if you don't like transsexual women, don't be one. But don't fuck with people who are. It's totally wrong. It should never ever happen. And I would like to make sure that the right people know what's going on. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now let's restart that clock.
So thank you guys. Back to follow, but I just wanted to introduce myself to you because I don't know if you're any of the big map of you. So reporter. That Berkeley side for dinner, for going on the scanner. I've done a very good job, but I'm looking forward to the new year and to be at our state meeting. And I'm looking forward to meeting some of the staff that are with the different efforts the city is doing reimagining. So you can always reach me in Berkeley Scanner. It's free for everyone to read, so we'll check it out. A lot of times when we get to the chief's report, which is always interesting, they mention things I wrote about weeks ago or several days ago. So hopefully those things are new to you because you're but yeah, thank you all for your and tackling those really important.
Thank you. And before I go on to our virtual public comment, if there are no additional speakers, okay. I do just want to note for the record that Board Member Blackaby has joined us. Okay, with that said, I'll now move on to our virtual attendees. If there's anybody who's joining us virtually and you'd like to provide public comment, please use the raise hand icon and we will call on you in the order we receive them. Again, if you'd like to make a public comment and you're joining us virtually, please use the raise hand icon and we will call on you to provide public comment. Chair, at this time, I do not see any hands raised. Chair is muted. Chair, you're muted.
Thank you, Board Member Calvita. I was rocking and rolling. Agenda item number 4, approval of minutes. Can we, well, if there's any changes, any edits, moments for pause, anything that needs to be taken into consideration? And if not, I would love a motion.
Second.
Excellent.
Okay.
Without seeing or hearing any dissension among the ranks, I'm going to go ahead and move to the ODPA staff reports and turn it over to you guys.
Evening, board members, chair, fellow staff, and members of the public. Thank you for joining us tonight. I wanted to just give a quick update since it's item from also last meeting, but we are in the process of updating the training log. And so do you have you want to elaborate a little bit on that? Where we are there?
Yeah, so again, if you saw one of the emails I sent out, we're part of the transition is better ways to collect data. We've sent out a form that's very helpful for us tracking data moving forward. At this moment, we're going back and making sure that we capture all of NACO trainings. Thank you to those that have emailed us about the ride-alongs you might have done. It's very helpful on our end and expedites the process. I'm hoping to have that by you with graphics by the next meeting so that we know where everyone's at with their hours.
As an effort to, in the spirit of training and opportunity to learn more about our field and criminal justice in general, I just wanted to flag some conferences that are going to be taking place this year. You won't have to make a decision now, but let me know if you might be interested in any of them. I'm telling you ahead of time for potential planning purposes. But the first one up, free attendant, but we would have to travel there, but it's at George Mason University. They have their Center for Evidence-Based Crime Policy. They have a symposium every 2 years. Now I've been to a few of them. They're excellent opportunities to learn about the latest in the field in criminology and evidence-based policies. That is taking place on Thursday, June 20th, 2024. We're going to be in Arlington, Virginia, at the Arlington campus, and I'll go ahead and forward you this information in writing as well. The International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference, the annual conference, will be in Boston this year. Investigative Rector and I had the opportunity to attend in San Diego this past year. It is draws a large crowd, international crowd, about 16,000 folks went to it. That conference will be from October 19th up to the 22nd of this year. And a really good opportunity again to learn about policing, and also they do have some fellow oversight practitioners that also participate and give presentations there. The NACO conference will also be taking place in October of this year in Tucson. I know there was interest from board members last time, and we couldn't get everybody to go, but definitely as much board members that we can take, we definitely make that work. So please let me know or pencil that date in your calendar, or that that month, but October. I don't know, Jason, do you know the particular dates yet, or?
I can look that up.
Okay.
Just give me a moment.
Well, at least it's in Arizona this year. I'm like, that sounds good.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
October.
It will be Sunday, October 15th through Thursday, October 7th,
Okay.
and usually around noon, so.
Thank you, Jason. And the, one that's gonna be very local and, hopefully, board member Kelly was excited about it, and she's a member for years of the American Society of Criminology, is gonna be in San Francisco this year. So I think that's a great opportunity to go across the bridge and get, a lot of, the latest, research from practitioners and academics. This year's theme is criminological research and education matters, people, policy, and practice in tumultuous times. I also do want to nudge the board up with all the great work that they're doing to consider potentially presenting on any particular topic and the subcommittees that they're doing different work. There's an active call for papers from, and I don't know if the board of PRC has done that before, but there's an active call for papers. The deadline is on Friday, March 22nd, and also the poster deadline is on Friday, May 17th. So that, just throwing that out there as a potential possibility, share knowledge.
What's the date on that,
That conference, San Francisco, from November 13th to the 16th.
That organization, that my former colleague and co-author is the president this year. So, yeah, be great to hear her talk too.
And if we get enough people, we can carpool over there, we'll figure it out.
take a bus?
For particular staffing updates, we have had the data analyst role vacant for quite some while. We had the opportunity to do interviews. We're expecting to make a decision soon. And they'll then be able to go through the background process. So within the next few months, we're expecting to have that position filled. We also have a live requisition for administrative analyst role. This is the role that Marisa left behind, and Marisa Martinez, when she retired earlier last year or mid-year last year. And we're gonna be able to recruit for that position, so we're expecting to fill that role as well. Our temporary move to the Ace Hardware building located on 2020 Milvia is being finalized. There was a few final items that needed to be done to get the final sign-offs, but we're in the process of that as well. And then just figure out some of the logistical things, making sure we have Wi-Fi and internet access. And another staffing update, or staff update rather, our investigators and actually all the staff are going to be participating in trauma-informed training, interview training. It's called FETI. Forensic Experiential Trauma Interview. It's a science and practice-based interview methodology informed by the latest research on neurobiology, trauma, and memory. We're going to be participating with folks in Oakland and other Bay Area practitioners. If there's any board members that are interested, we will also definitely see if that's something we can have board members do. There is a online 16-hour course, and then there's a practical training that you can take as well. I want to pause there to see if there are any questions about any of these announcements or anything I didn't mention.
Where is the NACO conference this year?
Is Tucson?
Oh,
I assume there's not travel budget for these. Are there virtual attendance options for
For which one?
any of the,
No, we can make it work if you let me know ahead of time. We were in the double-edged sword of having vacancies, and we had salary savings, so there's wiggle room how to use that.
Okay.
But if you let me know ahead of time, we'll try to make it work, so. Okay, and before, Mr. Chair, before I turn it back over to you, I do want to give the opportunity for Dr. Redondo from the city manager's office to give any updates from that end.
thank you, Director Aguilar. Hi, everyone. You all.
Really excited to report out that we had a very engaged and informative city council meeting yesterday. I truly appreciate those that had to tune in, for those that were unable to attend. The recording and presentation materials are now live on the City of Berkeley City Council agenda page. And I believe Director Aguila had shared out a save the date flyer team that contained a QR code. I think that QR code still works, so if anything, you can scan that and take you directly to that page. Posted as well. In terms of next steps, the reimagining team will be meeting soon to debrief from and discuss the comments and feedback that staff received yesterday. And we're looking forward to, again, sharing out a comprehensive update on our next steps in the near future. And I really want to thank my colleagues and leaders within the city and give a special shout out to Michelle Berger for partnership in the presentation with prevention and intervention plans informing package that we will be to implement here in the city. And another thing I wanted to mention is, again, just cannot thank you all enough for welcoming me into the group. I have learned so much in the 6 months that I've been here, and I'm just looking forward to continuing to stay engaged with the Police Accountability Board, with the community, and just really moving forward. And yesterday's session was truly a testament that reimagining is a collective effort, and we are committed to taking that collective work. Thank you.
That's it, Mr. Chair. If there's no questions for us, we'll turn it back over to you.
Do any of the board members have any questions for the office? Now's the time. All right, not seeing or hearing any, I'm gonna move us to agenda item 6, and that is the chair and board members' reports. I will be brief on account of lung capacity. Unfortunately, I caught the COVID, shaking hands and kissing babies, and I am trying to get right back out there and get to work as fast as possible. So thank you for bearing with me via Zoom. I wanted to give my thanks to the ODPA, to the chief, to Captain Tate, to all of the past and present members of the Police Accountability Board and the PRC who came and represented at the 50th anniversary. It was an amazing event. I had not seen that many stakeholders come together in years like they did in that room. Berkeley was on display, and I was very proud. And I just wanted to say thank you for everyone to coming out, being a part of it, engaging with our community. And I just thought it was worthwhile and an absolutely amazing experience. And I want to give my virtual flowers to the office and to all the collaborators who put that event together. It was excellent. That being said, that's all I have for now. Is there any other board member who would like to share something within this report time? Okay. So that takes us to agenda item 7, and that is Chief of Police report.
He skipped 6.
We were at 6.
Did we do that?
Mhm.
Oh. No.
I'm fast.
All right, am I up?
You are.
Yeah.
Excellent.
All committees.
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here tonight. I will be representing both the watch commander as well as sharing the chief's message. I'd like to start talking about hiring. So as we begin 2024, we set hiring goals for the year, but also reflected back on 2023 so that we can strategically plan as we move forward. Our goal was to hire 16 officers in 2023, and we were able to make 15 job offers. We made an additional 8 job offers to dispatchers in 2023. And with that, there are both positives and negatives associated with those figures. If we continue to hire officers at the same rate for the next 3 years, we'll likely stay flat based on the number of anticipated separations. And that proved to be the case in 2023, as well, with only marginal gains from 149 officers to 152. However, if we continue to hire dispatchers at the same rate, we should reach full staffing in 3 years based on the number of anticipated separations. And something we pay close attention to and we're sharing here is that no officer or dispatcher hired in 2023 has either failed the academy training or field training program so far. And this is an important point because there's always a concern that aggressive hiring goals may lead to lowering of standards. And we can assure the board as well as the community that the chief has made it clear that we will find efficiencies in our procedures and run short staff before we ever lose or lower our standards. Getting into cases of interest, on Thursday, January 18th at about 8:15 in the evening, a patrol officer stopped a car at the intersection of Delaware and Franklin, and the vehicle hadn't been registered for 6 months, and the driver was found to be unlicensed. During a probable cause search of the vehicle, the officer found approximately 417 grams of marijuana, 21.7 grams of psilocybin, which are mushrooms, and a Celtic semi-automatic handgun that had been reported stolen. That driver was also found to be on parole and was prohibited from possessing a gun. And a little bit of discussion on the retail thefts here. Wanted to highlight that also on Thursday, the 18th, our property crimes detectives and bicycle officers set up a surveillance operation at REI in San Pablo. REI, as many of you know, has been the target of relentless retail thieves who are organized and steal thousands of dollars in jackets and other high-end merchandise. Our officers waited outside and they were able to arrest 3 suspects after they left the store with as much merchandise as they could carry, and they didn't pay. They had so grand theft is anything over $950, that's considered a felony. And we ended up with 3 in custody that night. And I'd like to add that our detective division, patrol, and bicycle officers have been doing these type of operations over the past several months. And we'll continue doing these to the extent that we're able to with our current staffing constraints. Another case on January 22nd, which was a Monday, the communication center received a call from a person in New York reporting that their sister was the victim of domestic violence and being held against her will in a rear house in the 1200 block of Virginia Street. The caller provided the victim's cell phone number and dispatchers tried to make contact with her. The victim responded to text messages that she was being held at gunpoint and being attacked. They were unable to corroborate information provided from either the caller or the victim communicating through text messages. So officers suspected that the call was malicious, and we consider that a swatting call. And then those type of incidents, a caller generally makes up a call to draw a tactical response to the locations. Officers adjusted accordingly and eventually found that there was no rear house at that address and no domestic violence victim. And this was the 3rd swatting call that we've received in recent weeks. These calls generally report major events to draw a large emergency response that have the potential to be extremely volatile and are obviously very resource intensive. Getting into on that. Okay. In regards to policies and other updates, last Friday, the chief shared the most recent quarterly early warning audit report with the PAB in accordance with policy 1041, and that's our 5th report. We're currently wrapping up and reviewing the 2023 equipment ordinance annual report. And per the ordinance, that is due to the PAB by March 15th. A couple follow-up items. Chief Lewis was asked at the last PAB meeting what the status of the body-worn camera policy was as far as coming back to the subcommittee. She shared the update last Friday and also shared that she anticipated being ready to come back to the subcommittee in early February. And we were asked about retail theft, and I think the specific question was how do arrests compare to a rise in occurrences? Our data analysis team took a look at the relationship between retail thefts and arrests related to those cases and found that while both the cases and arrests have increased, the cases have outpaced our clearances. And when we're talking about clearances, we're generally looking at the status of the case as either being arrest, closed, or closed by MO. And then those cases are pulled out, and the status of arrest is removed from that, and then the subset of that is the clearance. So we do have sort of a deeper dive into the summary of those statistics, but I think just generally, if the question is, what is the relationship? Cases are outpacing arrests. And the status of our mutual aid documents with UC, there's an agreement and addendum that we're currently, that we're being reviewed and combined into one document. I think the chief also shared the link to those with the PAB. And just in looking at those, we don't anticipate substantial changes. That is all I have.
I'm gonna just jump in there as chair and go back to that mutual aid conversation. We do have a role to play within the mutual aid conversation, do we not? As the Police Accountability Board?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Director, do we have the language within the charter that says we do?
Yeah, we can pull that up, but there is authority for reviewing all the MOUs. We can look it up.
Yeah.
And I realize you weren't here last meeting, but this was a concern because we weren't, we weren't very knowledgeable about the mutual aid and mutual assistance agreements, but we should be as the PAB, as the charter says.
Okay. I will certainly
So-
share back with a concern of the collaboration.
Excellent. Well, my question would be about bringing it back. I would like you to bring back, how do we start instituting steps to get that work going? Do we have the language so everybody on the board is okay on the same page? And I see you, City Attorney Chang, I see you're here too. If you have anything to add on this, that would be great. Does somebody else without COVID want to read that?
Sorry, let me.
Yeah, we have it. We're just putting it up on the screen.
Yeah.
So I'll read it while we get the, on the screen, but it's, section 382 of section 121. Following the charter, review and recommend for city council approval all agreements, letters, memorandum of understanding, or policies which express terms and conditions of mutual aid, information sharing, cooperation, and assistance between the Berkeley Police Department and all other local, state, and federal law enforcement, intelligence, and military agencies or private security organizations.
So we haven't set up or established a collaborative way to do this, but I'd like to, and I'd like to do this as soon as possible. And so I'm extending an invitation to the chief for us to sit down and figure out the best way for us to do that.
I will convey that message.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that anyone else would like to ask or
Yeah, board member
bring up?
I thank you for that report. I really didn't what you said about the early warning system. If there was something from the chief, I must have missed it.
So she said that last Friday, she shared the most recent quarterly early warning audit report with the PAB.
She shared it with our certified, she shared it with our office. If we haven't gotten it to you yet, then we will.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Captain Tate, thank you for that report. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So I'm wondering, this is with regard to the fixed cameras that have been installed around Berkeley. And I'm wondering if if the department has collected or you know offhand evidence in terms of how useful any particular one of those cameras has been in terms of either solving crime or catching it as it happens. Like, what is the evidence so far on the cameras that have been installed?
So far, the fixed cameras have only been installed in one location, and that is at 6th and University. We're still working through the installation process right now with all the other locations, so that work has not yet been done.
And what does that involve? I'm not familiar with the installation process.
So it's a permitting process, and it's more or less landing in our public works sort of purview for their collaboration with a vendor in order to do for instance, the electrical work, identifying the poles and the permitting and things of that nature that are required in order for them to actually be installed. With regard to your question for the 6th and University cameras, they have been live for a few months, and to date, we have had, I would say, less than a half a dozen inquiries with our homicide unit, and they have not yet been instrumental in solving any crime.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Another question? Board Member Black?
All right. Is there somebody else?
Yes.
Yeah, there's that one more question, Captain Tate, thank you. During my ride along with Officer Montero, I observed that in most interactions, there's a RIPA data collection for each of those. Based on an earlier public comment, is there similar data collected for gender identity or transgender data that would indicate any trends in that direction as well? Or
So
lack thereof?
I do understand that there is a potential recent court decision that is being handed down about the collection of gender identity. I don't know the specifics for that, and I don't believe that we have done anything to change that work. As a general matter of practice and the way that it was implemented, yes, we were collecting gender identity information.
I see, okay.
Mr.
Go ahead,
Chair,
Director.
quick question for Captain. Captain, with the trends, have you seen whether the financial incentives have been successful? I know it's still early on, or what is it that our city can do better to incentivize officers? I know others by jurisdictions are also having aggressive hiring strategies, but considering budget season that's coming in, what, if any, trends have you seen there? Incentives?
I'm sorry, sir. I had a little bit of a hard time understanding you at the beginning. I heard something about budget and trends, and I would love it if you could fill in those gaps for me.
Sure. So I was just going back to the hiring.
Yes.
That you indicated that you're at a rate of 16 per year, and that would, if you remain there, that would allow you to be flat, considering the retirement, and other potential, reasons for officers leaving. What I was asking is, have we seen whether the incentives, the financial ones that the city has, is being helpful, or is it not enough considering the other nearby jurisdictions that are feeding for officers?
I think that's a wonderful question, and I would have to put that to our personnel and training unit to take a look at that and give you an accurate assessment of what the benefits have been.
Thank you.
Welcome.
What are the incentives? Can you tell me, I'm just curious to know, what are the incentives that are being offered now for recruits?
So we have hiring incentives for police officer and public safety dispatcher. So, and those are milestone, sort of incentives where when you're hired, you get X amount of money upon hire, X amount of money upon completion of the academy, and then the last threshold for police officer is completion of probation. So they're milestone payments as an incentive. And then there's also incentives for lateral police officers to come from another agency, which would also be, the thresholds for those are upon signing, and then upon completion of field training, and then probation.
And do you know what the monetary amount is at each threshold?
I would have to look at our website.
Okay, I mean, that's okay, I can look it up. I was
Yeah,
just
I think
curious.
I think it's about 7,500 approximately for a new police officer, $5,000 for a new dispatcher.
Mm-hmm, okay.
Do you have any thoughts as to how this board could support the recruitment process or help improve retention or anything like that?
Yes, go recruit for us.
Those incentives are great.
Yeah, I think that, you know, it is a benefit for all city employees. So any city employee who recruits a dispatcher or police officer is eligible for the recruiting incentive or the referral incentive. So that's another piece of it. I think, yeah, just word of mouth and talking about how amazing it is to be in the city of Berkeley and police community, and all of the positive energy that we can put on that. I think it makes people feel better about choosing Berkeley when they have all these other options.
Excellent. So if we don't have any more questions for Captain Tate, I'd like to say thank you so much. We do appreciate your time and answering all of our questions and your report. And I look forward to seeing you at our next meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. And that takes us to agenda item number 8. And that's subcommittee reports. And Jose, I'm going to let you shepherd this along.
Last time there was a preference to go through the list of subcommittees. Is that still the preference today? Okay. With that said, I'll start with regulations, if there's any updates. And that's Board Member Calavita and Board Member Leftwich. I believe we're still waiting. There hasn't been subcommittee work, but.
Yes, we don't have any report. I'm still waiting for the process to be finished. That was something I wanted to ask about, but I think this maybe another meeting. We'll discuss it.
I thought our closed session tonight was going to focus on that.
Yes.
So, because we're just in advance until.
Yes, it's been 15 months.
Do we
City
have any
attorney,
update about that? We're gonna have a closed session?
I don't know that we agenda today on that topic, but I would want to yield, if you have any updates, the city attorney. Mr. Kenny.
Yes, so I normally what I can say, publicly is that, we understand that the police union has changed of leadership. In the last few months, Eric County.
I'm sorry, can we have James come closer to the microphones? I hate to be that guy, but I can't hear him. Can you come closer? Just come on over to towards the.
Yeah, so my understanding and what I can share publicly is that the police union in the last few months had some turnover both among their leadership. Their former President Sergeant Ledoux left the police department, so that caused a new election for new leadership in the police union. Also, the attorney who was representing the police union left the law firm that's representing the police union, and so they recently reassigned the case to another attorney. And so that we on the city side have been reaching out regularly to try to continue to engage the process. But that kind of turn of events in the last few months has slowed things down. What I can say from the city perspective and what we're saying to the union is that we are ready to proceed with the next steps. And beyond that, we can provide further discussion in closed session, but that's what I can share publicly.
Is there any pressure that the city can apply to move these things along? Because as Board Member Calavita said, it's been.
We voted unanimously on the draft in October of 2022. And we've been waiting.
Yeah, I understand that. And so, what I can say is that we have been reaching out regularly to the police union to try to push this process along. Some of these personnel issues in the last 2 months or so have been slowed things down, but I can reach out again tomorrow or the negotiator to try to put out another, to try to push the union. We can also discuss at a future closed session, and we've discussed with the director some of the process issues going forward on the city side, because this is a process that engages the entire city. And so we are also, this is not a process that's being handled solely by the city attorney's office. It's also being handled as well by HR and the city manager's office. And so there is a broader group working on this, and we can discuss in a future closed session.
Let me do that at our next meeting, because we've been requesting closed session for a few months now. Even just to discuss the internal process issues.
Let me take that back to the city attorney and we will discuss we understand and receive the cost and that was related to. So I can take that back to the city attorney.
Jamie, you also, I'm not clear, there's like a concept of impasse, where there is collective bargaining and then impose the modifications to chart if, or the regulations, if the union is being obstructionist essentially by just delaying. That's something I'd like to know.
This is subject to the same general labor law principles that include the possibility of going to impasse. In this process, we are not at that point yet. That is something that we can look at in the future if this process doesn't proceed or stalls. But there's a number of steps to get impasse. There has to be a last specified law order from one of the other parties. There has to be essential notice to the other side that they intend to declare impasse. We're not yet, but it is subject to the same general principles of labor law that would include that process.
And who would get to decide that we were at that point?
So it would be the council. So the council is the body that will ultimately enact these regulations, and the council is the body that is representing the city in the labor process.
So that's my report on regulation. Nothing to report there. We're still working. We are working on it.
Well, actually, I would like to use this opportunity. Michelle, I sent you the updated data and asked you just to take a look at it. So is that something you're doing? Maybe for 5 days. I can reset it.
That'd be great.
So the committee consists of Board Member Wilson and himself. That's what this dialogue is. We have a report almost ready to go, but we are finalizing the statistics, making sure that everything is proper.
And I will say from the latest iteration of the data, which I hope is the right data. One of the things that's pretty striking is there really has been no reduction of racial disparities in stops. And so when we talk about like making progress on things, I think it is really important that we look at these kind of outcomes as opposed to just what we're trying to do. But this is, we're in the last stages of finalizing this data and the report will be done.
It might be worth, if I have just 1 minute, it might be worth bringing new members up to speed on what it is we're talking about. I don't know, people, would that be useful? So the very impartial policing effort came about subsequent to a working group that was, the latest very impartial policing effort, because the PRC had engaged in 2017 and in 2014, and the latest effort came about as a result of the mayor's working group on very impartial policing. This was after the city commissioned the Center for Policing Equity to do a report on racial disparities in Berkeley policing, and they found, I believe, something like Black motorists were 5.5 or 6 times more likely to be stopped by the police in Berkeley than white motorists, and et cetera. And so the mayor's working group met, for which our, at the time, Chair Ramsey was chair of that working group. I was on it. A number of PRC, 3 PRC members, commissioners were on it. Academics, police representatives from the police department. And we came up with about 11 recommendations to city council. Our package was passed unanimously by city council. This was in the context following the murder of George Floyd and other visibility killings. And city council passed those recommendations, which, for example, was the reduction of stopping for low-level traffic infractions that didn't have anything to do with public safety, a invigorated early warning system, and so forth. So, and as part of that package, this body, at the time the PRC, but then subsequently the PAB, was made responsible for monitoring and assessing the implementation of all of those directives. And so that's what this would be our first report, although we had conversations with members of the department, including the chief, about implementation. And so this is our first report, and we're trying to make it pretty comprehensive, so it's been taking a while. That's the committee on FIP, as it's called.
Next up, we have the Surveillance Technology Policy Committee. I believe there hasn't been any, and that's, again, Board Member Calavita and Chair Moore. The last action was on the LPR, if I remember correctly.
I'm not aware of any activity on that committee.
Yeah, I don't think we've done anything yet to warm that engine up, but thank you for giving us that little push. That's good. I'll get with you, Board Member Calvita.
Again, we're almost ready to go, but we're trying to get together the data in a sophisticated way, and it will be forthcoming. Sorry.
The body worn camera policy subcommittee, brief reporting on that earlier, but if there's anything else.
Yeah, no, we're just actually trying to set up a meeting the first week of February with the department. So hopefully they'll have a policy for us to review it.
Then the conflict of interest subcommittee.
We're also in the process of trying to schedule a meeting, so I sent out an email today. Hopefully you all saw it, and we can get something on the calendar soon. I just responded.
Then the lexical policy review.
Same thing, we've been stalled just with scheduling issues. I think the last request was to you, Jose, to send out another doodle poll, and I think it's probably more efficient if it's a small committee. For me, just to email people rather than waiting for a doodle poll. So I think I'll just go ahead and do that, so we can get something on our calendars.
And if that's all, I'll proceed with the budget review.
Forgot the off-duty committee.
No, it's on there, it's still, there's still have a few more on the list.
Awesome.
But I'll start, Board Member Wilson and I have been working, there's really kind of two parts. One is to obtain as much content as we can from City Manager's Office, Finance, and City Auditor with respect to previous work that's been done on the budget, and Board Member Wilson can work on that. And in parallel, we're working on the process part, which is how can we insert ourselves into the conversations that DPD and the City Manager and the Finance team are having. Because a lot of, again, our questions are about how are you formulating the budget, what are your objectives, why are you asking for this money, not just reviewing the line items, but what's the thought process? And Carl from the City Manager's Office working with us has been very responsive, which we appreciate. So more to come, but we're in the information gathering and trying to insert ourselves into the process stage of this. Fair to say.
And then I'll move on to the commendation subcommittee.
Quick update, by the way, apologies for being late, I was chauffeuring my daughter, so good to be here, but I was chauffeuring my daughter from the event to back to the house. On the accommodations front, thanks to Board Member Wilson, as well as our committee members, we're crafting a short list. The intention is to come back to the full PAB next meeting with recommendations to get ratification from the board on this next batch of accommodations. So we've made a lot of progress. We're moving down a full list of 150 odd. Thank you, Board Member Harris, for her input. So we'll come back with a short list for review and inclusion next year.
Okay, off-duty funds.
Apologies for interjecting. Vice Chair Harris and I have been in contact with Lieutenant Rittenhouse, and he's been collaborating with us on some of the policies that cover off-duty conduct, and we're looking forward to future collaboration with him. We haven't yet set a meeting date, but he's been engaging with us, so we appreciate that.
Okay, and then the strategic planning retreat, I know there's also an agenda item for tonight. If there's any additional.
I'm having a hard time hearing, what did you say?
Oh, and then the strategic planning for the retreat, I know there's an item tonight, but if there's.
Yeah, I can just wait until we get to that agenda.
Now just, as before we transition, I'll again just use the time to remind folks that we did recently send out a link for the subcommittee. Again, as part of the charter requirement, you do get compensated $20 per hour for each subcommittee meeting. So it's good, it helps us report, it helps us keep a good record. If you need me to resend it, again, we're looking into ways of making things more accessible for y'all. We also provide emails, reach out to me if you're still having issues. But it's just helpful to keep track of subcommittee work that way. Helps us keep our ducks in a row, so we appreciate it, thank you.
Just two thoughts on the subcommittee conversation. One, I know a lot of the subcommittees were formed when we were a fraction of the size that we were now. So if folks that are on older subcommittees that are having trouble getting traction would benefit from new people. But I think it'd be helpful to let us know. And then just another thought to potentially expedite this in the future, if it makes sense for us to have this as a shared document that we can update, you know, a fifth column here on latest updates might allow us to zoom through that.
That's definitely something we could have.
I love that idea. So is there anything else from subcommittee reports? And if not, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back over to the office for the legislative and policy update.
This is our legislative update for since last meeting. Again, this is a real high level review. I'm going very, very in detail here. We'll start with state policies, do some of the electrical updates that come by and talk a bit about Berkeley lobbying and some of the local things that the city council have been up to. Michelle will start us first. Let's get legislative update.
Right, so the first one that we have for y'all, we just have two. This time around, SB 719 requires agencies to ensure real time public access to radio communications. Something to note, and the main change that the bill makes is that they're defining a law enforcement agency as all but University of California, California State University, Community College, PDs. They don't go into really why that is, but it covers all other areas for Carter Park, Planning District, CHP. It just doesn't that public access for campus schools. Okay. AB 1299, this is a pretty simple change, basically instead of only to their superiors within the departments, school resource officers are now report directly to school principals. The bill is very specific in its intent. They really focus heavily on disciplinary measures to essentially have collaboration with school administration. So that is that. That's all.
The next poll, we do 1601, relocation of campus instructions. There was a reading section 1403, which is memorandums of understanding. They also created California Highway Patrol to CHP. A notable change is in the drug and alcohol free workplace. They removed off marijuana possession and influence restrictions. And they also moved link to God to hyperlinks. There's just hyperlinks there now. Any questions on the lexical policy?
Real quick process change, and it's also to work with language. Do these automatically roll through to the BPP Lexipol, or is there a gating factor? Like, what does this mean? Like, so Lexipol's updated. What does this mean for our simple regulations of BPP? So they know.
Sure, yeah. So the way that the Lexipol portal works is that whenever a policy change is implemented, officers get notified for them to acknowledge the policy itself. So as soon as we get that notification, we just kind of click acknowledge. There's the option for, and I say us in this case because we staff have access to this portal. We get to see what the previous policy was. It gets redlined for us. Once we acknowledge it, it gets updated in the manual. In terms of the member of the public, one of the patterns that we've noticed, perhaps we can confirm, is that the public manual, which is required to be posted on the website, gets updated once a month with those new policies as well.
But is that notice going to the board?
So we get an email saying a policy has been updated.
Right.
And essentially we'll summarize here is kind of what we end up knowing through meetings. So
But it hasn't been distributed to us in the past, right?
No, previously, no.
Which is part of this discussion is because of that,
Right.
decided to have it. One of the things in the benefits, a lot of the things are tied to the city council. We can now go back, although the board members are on it, go back to them and say, hey, can we get the board member? Plus the police department, see they can get direct access to Lexipol database, which I think will be very beneficial. Because it is tied to the city council. we could potentially bypass the order. But you have it as soon as we get this work.
So I don't know who to direct this question to, but these Lexipol updates, these are updates that Lexipol, modifications that Lexipol has done. But they're not like automatically input into BPD policy. BPD incorporate, well, largely, yes, but there are some small tweaks that the BPD does.
Although it sounds like this isn't Lexipol doing it, it's the department doing it, reassigning location of the captain's instruction.
That's
Or
all.
for moving off duty, what?
So that's a Lexipol change.
Flexible company.
Yes.
But the company's policies, I don't believe, get automatically, they don't automatically become BPD policy without tweaks, because sometimes there are Berkeley City requirements that supersede or augment what Lexipol says, so.
And we still have Captain Taylor one to,
What's that?
oh, we have Captain Taylor one, just see.
Oh, yeah, she's on the screen.
I'm happy to answer that question for you. So, you are absolutely correct. We get the notification from Lexipol that there has either been a change to state or federal law. And at that point, our policy sergeant will take a look at what the update is, look at the policy, and ensure that whatever the update is not in violation of anything that we have already previously agreed to have as language in our policy. So generally speaking, the updates are to changes in law that need to be incorporated into the policy, but they always will be reviewed by our policy sergeant prior to pushing the update into our physical policy.
But these updates are different from the original conversion of the Berkeley policies into the Lexipol policies, which is a whole other thing. So these are updates to policies that Berkeley has already converted, right, on whatever subject.
Are nearly completely into Lexipol, and all of the work that we did with the PRC years and years ago, all of those things should be in our current Lexipol policies.
Right, but there was a list that he sent to us months ago, because we had asked for a list of the policies that had been converted to Lexipol since the inception of the PAB, because we were a very active subcommittee on the PRC, but the PAB has been sidetracked with our regulations, and so we're way behind on Lexipol, which is why we formed a new committee to go look back. And so our big concern is that there are a bunch of policies that were converted without the PAB's involvement.
So it seems to me like the ones that we have had a lot of discussion about it, and where it comes to changes to state and federal law, those are things that our police officers have to be able to operate. They have to have a policy right now. They have to know what to do. And if we're operating in an old policy that, say, it has to do with how we treat abandoned autos, not everything is going to be something that rises to the threshold of necessarily needing the level of review I think that you're talking about. There are certainly going to be policies that you're going to want to look at and collaborate with us on. But those are also up for review. So those things to state and federal law, those are things that have to happen for our cops to be able to operate.
Right, that's understood, but what we were hoping to get was some guidance from the department on the list of 100 policies, some of which are very minor tweaks and others which were the conversion. And the chief told us that she just didn't have the resources to have somebody work with us on that. So it's been a bit of frustration about that, because we're having to kind of go through that list policy by policy to figure out what happened.
So one thing that may be helpful is to go through, you should have access to the entire list of all the policies in Lexipol, and going through and highlighting the ones that are the pain points that you certainly want to review. That might be a good starting place. And then we could look at what resources it might take to identify those policies. But again, our policy sergeant has been entirely overwhelmed because she just stepped into that role after the former policy sergeant resigned. So, that's where some of the challenges exist with our staffing.
So there's one suggestion, feels like there's two things. One is the retroactive review, which requires its own consideration. I guess my process proposal would be for any of these go forward little updates, just bringing them here just so we know. And if there's anything that's of any concern, we can go back and take another look going forward. And my guess is most of these are, like you said, it's comporting with state and federal law, or it's a minor grammatical change, whatever it is, they're probably fine. But it feels like we don't want to get in the way of anything, slowing anything down. At the same time, if there's something of concern that we see, we should kind of literally pick it back up and break those people. So I just think as long as this is part of our process, every meeting, we see what's changed. And again, it might be on a consent calendar, we're just like, fine, whatever, we'll pull one or two if we have a question. We just need to make sure that the proactive stuff going forward is part of our review process.
Right. And just to clarify that for you, Captain Tate, I expect all of our engagement with the policies will be to varying degrees retroactive for existing and active policies, as opposed to a barrier to implement a state or federal law change. And in terms of the Lexipol review that board member Lethwich mentioned, I think our intention is to prioritize that list and start to put together clarifying questions to be as efficient with the time that we use with that sergeant as possible. I would be curious what their name is, though. I don't know if we've had a chance to be introduced to that, to the policy sergeant.
Sergeant Spielman.
Sergeant Spielman, that's great.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out that in the Lexipol policies, when you go into the update, I think someone already mentioned that it should give you access to the previous policy. So that you should, I'm not sure whether or not it has a date on it, but that might be a good point of reference for you to figure out what has been changed and what hasn't.
And Captain Tate, can I ask you a few questions about our Lexipol contract?
You certainly can. I may or may not be able to answer them.
Fair enough. How long are we locked into a relationship with Lexipol?
So I think it's an ongoing contract that is renewed annually, and I don't know that there is any end date to it. I would have to take a look at what's in there, and I imagine that it would be subject to contract extensions with anything.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem.
And at that, I guess that would be the last word on this. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add? All right.
Yes. Vice Chair Harris?
Yeah. I just have one question about the policy changes. Does the department make changes to any of the policies that don't come from Lexipol? So like if we have a Lexipol policy, is the department able to make changes to that policy without going through Lexipol? Or how does that work? I mean, like if something doesn't, something needs to change, like you said, there may be things that, city issues that prevent the department from following that policy verbatim. How are those types of changes made, and are they made often?
I'll give you potentially the most easy answer for me to access is we used to be an agency that had general orders, and we converted to a Lexipol format. So all of our policies eventually will be Lexipol format. And by and large, it's because there are attorneys who sit and their sole purpose is to tell us about all of these changes to state and federal law. So that being said, they're looking at it and they give us the recommendations. And if we look at it and there are nuances in Berkeley, for instance, let's just take our driving under the influence policy. If I look at that and I say, okay, well, I'm the expert in this area, and I know that this might be good for what they do in Southern California, but these are the tests that we're going to do in Berkeley, then we can make those changes. So there's nothing that precludes us from doing that. Here's the challenge. When we start sort of doctoring the policies and get away from the Lexipol language, it becomes more nuanced and challenging for us to track all of those changes that we have personally made. So when we get an update, it might not read appropriately based on what they're recommending if we've changed it. So we just have to be careful with how we're doing it, but the short answer is yes, we can change it.
Thank you. Director, can I ask you once again, I know I've asked you previously to disseminate the information that we received about Lexipol to the Police Accountability Board members? Are you? Yes. Thank you. Are we ready to move on? Okay.
Lexipol. Belongs to the city of Berkeley.
So, we did do some follow-up research, due to some inquiries from the board on lobbyists for, the city of Berkeley. Since 2013, Hanson Public Affairs has consistently represented Berkeley in terms of its lobbying activities. We can share the presentation that hasn't shared already, but that relates to that and the page that says they're large group of lobbyists. It's clear from their list of clients that they specialize in representing cities. That's their specific sort of client population.
I think the question, I think I had asked the question before, because we were interested in knowing the city's position on different bills. And so I don't know if there's something public on the Berkeley's website, or if it's appropriate to contact the lobbyists to ask for that information, but that was, you know, our interest. You're giving us really interesting updates on different state bills. It's like, well, so has Berkeley taken a position? And so do you know if there's some way for you to figure out if Berkeley has taken a position on different?
That's something that, so things that since the last meeting, one day, make sure we find out who's lobbying. And I engaged the mayor's office, their staff there to find out what the process is, hoping to bring somebody to the meeting to let us know what they expect, what makes for successful lobbying efforts. So bringing a whole sort of workshop to the board and explore that option. But yes, we are gonna try to identify which particular item the council has, city has taken position. You have that information.
I personally don't think we need training on lobbying. It's more, you know, what, because I think our board may want to urge the council to take a position on a bill that we find particularly valuable. I don't have anything in mind, but you may identify a bill and say, that's a great bill. Has the Berkeley taken a position? No. And so we may want to, you know, vote, have a letter that urges the council to take a position. So that type of thing, just identifying the city's position on different bills.
We're actually doing that, but that, you guys can make a decision, but I think that the value. What makes a successful patient that intention of the legislative body? So that was the idea behind that. You don't need that. That was, but we can find out that decision.
The other thing that I think would be of interest and for the city attorney's office, and I don't know if you could answer this off the top of your head, is whether or not this body has the authority to take positions on legislation, or if or to the city of Berkeley that can take positions.
So we would need to review that further, and research any city policies on that.
Okay, I think that would be helpful if you could look in.
Did you skip a page that the item that was heard last night about the additional security camera, at least in? Oh,
There we go.
So, was thinking of notes about this, Councilman Hubbard, Councilman Bartlett submitted an action item to add additional security cameras, lighting and signage, certain intersections. There are further costs to the next budget process and restricted camera uses on criminal investigations. The cameras are not intended for continuous surveillance, it's part of the consent calendar, then the end of the month, and the director, if you guys want to say on this.
So I circulated the packet of the presentation copies. We can include in the minutes, it was very preliminary analysis, but the idea behind it is various interest, your potential purview. One of the things that both the ordinance and the Berkeley policy contemplate the city manager kind of technology, the city council goes to be the full city body, but in this particular instance, this action, we have city council members, Councilor Humbert and Barton, introduced this addition, proposal, yeah. So we were just flagging your attention, the process that is contemplated, the ordinance, also want to speak penalties. Some areas that we noted in the, there doesn't seem to be an elected justification for the additional cameras in those particular locations. Now, there is language about crime rates, generally speaking, in the city and the districts in question, but we're trying to look particularly at those locations and also identify fair, in possible other one of the things with any policy, it has, it should be data driven in that it can achieve the goals that is intended. So that's one plan. One of the things recommended is that also the site wanted to make it to the council, they should probably ask the council to city manager determine these locations are appropriate, what is the scope of these cameras, what particular model, and just limit it down and find the actual scope and the specifics of this surveillance program. And we also started over California, also some bar attention for what the PRT and
The PRC and also the PAB, I think, took this up, if I'm not wrong. And so I think these memos that I had put together some time ago, I think I think they're both from 2021. And you know, we did a lot of work, we on the PAB did a lot of work, research on the effectiveness of these fixed cameras to deter crime or to solve crimes after the fact. And one of the articles that is most often cited is a 2011 Urban Institute article, which is cited in the Bartlett and Humbert proposal. And I just want to point out that if you read that article from front to back, what you find is that the evidence is very shaky and that any impact on reducing crime is largely dependent on very wide camera coverage. In other words, lots of cameras all over the city. And also 24/7 monitoring, neither of which is imagined for the city of Berkeley. And I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention because it is once again cited in the proposal by Humbert and Bartlett as an example of the ability of cameras to deter crime. And that's just not what that article says. And the PAB has pointed that out before to council, and they continue to ignore that fact, and it's a little frustrating. And we heard tonight that the installation has only happened at one of the 10 cameras imagined that were passed by city council, authorized by city council last year, or forget how long ago. So I understand, I understand the urgency of doing something about public safety and crime rates. There's no evidence that I know of that strongly suggests that these cameras are effective in the way that they're being proposed. And they're talking about a lot of money in this proposal, and I would just say that there's other ways of approaching crime, such as the ceasefire program that was authorized in 2020 and still, I think, has not been put into effect. It has been shown around the country to be fairly useful in reducing crime and less expensive, not technological, but effective. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Is the director are you asking us if we should submit a formal letter to council? That's not on the agenda tonight. I don't know if we have to vote on it. Can we informally ask you to take the letter that you did write, pursuant to Councilmember Han's request, share that with all council, perhaps modify it to add this point that Kitty's making? I mean, I was reached out to directly as Councilmember Han's appointment to the board. I did not have that history, but I shared my views. I failed to notice that this is put on consent, which I just think is outrageous. So I don't know what we can do within the confines of how this was agendized. But I thought you wrote a good letter that perhaps could be modified a bit and sent to council in time for the meeting on the 30th. I don't know what would be appropriate.
Sure, I just want to make sure.
Is that a motion? Because I would second that if that's a motion.
I don't know that we can take action on something on the agenda.
The legislative update was, I don't know.
Okay, everything on the agenda.
Can I ask a quick question before we make a motion? Is that all right? Are you making a motion?
Oh, no, yeah, go ahead.
What is the director's opinion about subsection 2 of 299-030, which says that the city manager must present a surveillance use policy for each surveillance technology to the police review commission? Is that triggered in this instance?
So that process has taken place, which is why we have, and they do their annual report, and they, earlier last year too, there was a conversation that the board engaged in regarding the surveillance technology, policies. What I think my observation here and is that the language involving ordinance and repeat policy and vision of the city manager. So in this particular instance, it's not explicitly prohibiting council from doing this, but it's also not explicitly saying that they're the ones that are doing the introduction to new technology. So the potential concern there being that it could be a workaround to the city manager's duties to bring forth or engage with the PAB and the broader community on the introduction of these surveillance technology.
Which is an issue you flagged in the letter.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to understand the construction of this, of your understanding of the construction, because you're reading it a different way than I'm reading.
Okay.
When I read it, I see prior to the adoption by the city council the question is of what? Of the surveillance technology or of a policy? It's a little ambiguous to me. So if it is prior to adoption by the city council of each surveillance technology, the city manager must present a surveillance use policy to the police review commission. Like if it's that construction, then every time the city council adopts specific new technologies, the city manager should provide to this board a new policy governing the use of that technology. That's the way that I read this.
I would have the city attorney with it.
But they argue that it's not a.
But that policy.
Yeah,
wouldn't change.
it is happening.
Yeah. But that wouldn't change. Okay.
The technology was already approved. And I believe that the response you got to your letter was that this is not a new technology. These are just additional cameras.
They already had.
Right.
Okay.
So under PPD policies, they have 351 and 1304.
Okay.
1304 is their use policy.
So they're saying because they're using cameras in other parts of the city,
Right.
this is not a new surveillance technology adopted. This is okay. So
But again, the other interpretation, point there would be, is this. So there's the language about using new surveillance technology or using surveillance technology previously approved by the city council for purpose or in manner not previously approved by the city council. The change in the locations now make it a new purpose or in manner not previously.
So what is your understanding of the relationship between 1C and section 2? So is everything that fall under 1A through D must be presented to the PRC or the PAB in this instance? Or are they supposed to?
At this time. We did a preliminary analysis, legislative intent. It just.
Yeah.
Section speaks to the interplay between transparency and ensuring that there's cooperation throughout the process. Doesn't seem like this is being done here.
Is the deadline for the city attorney's office, is the deadline too soon to have an opinion about the specific ordinance?
So Hansel's office sent this memo to our office yesterday at the end of the day. And my colleagues are reviewing this when we're preparing a response to what you provided us, Hansel, but I don't have that ready as of tonight. And I know that this issue has been raised by many parts of the city as well as by council members. And so these types of issues about the process and the interplay with the surveillance ordinance are being reviewed by our office. So we will be providing advice both to the board as well as to the council.
Okay, so I'm interested in the specific stake that this board has in reviewing, you know, the new manner that it's being used.
Right.
And, okay, I just want that to be clear. That's all. I just want to clarify that there's some sort of action being taken by the city attorney and collaboration with our director's office and the board on that, but we won't have a specific meeting before.
No,
your
that's
test. Yeah.
why I think we should empower the director to send a letter to council. Reflective of what he's already sent and any modifications based on the discussion tonight, and leave it at that.
I second that. If that was a motion.
Yeah, sure.
I'm glad we got there. That's perfect.
The director submitted a letter to council agenda reflecting the letter that already sent and any modifications based on the discussion tonight that he chooses to make. It looks like is this concluding the legislative update item?
Yes.
Yeah. So I had asked for an update from the city attorney's office on the Brown Act. Has that made its way to you? Like any changes effective January 1? Because I know there were a number of changes that impacted Berkeley Keene, which, as you know, is what the state bar falls under, but I was wondering about the Brown Act as well.
Can we vote on this first before?
Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. We're gonna vote on this, right?
Yeah.
By the way, the signal is free to speak up. Okay, so I'll start with the roll call vote, Chairman.
Yes.
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 And Board Meetings.
Yes.
Carries.
Okay.
Did you have something to say about the Brown Act?
No.
Oh, okay. So has that made its way, like basically, are there any changes effective January 1? And then I wanted a little bit of a primer because the other things we do here are unusual, like honestly, I'm not a Brown Act person, but voting to approve the agenda, voting to adjourn, do those under key. I would just like a little bit of a primer and then this long thing we have to do at the beginning of COVID and for several years post the pandemic, where city attorney changing that. So I had put in that request at one point. I don't know if it made its way to your office.
Yeah, my Deputy City Attorney Hylas briefed me on the discussion at the last meeting. Some of those issues that you raise are more process, Robert's rules type questions rather than Brown Act questions, like, what voting for the agenda or reading the COVID, disclaimer at the beginning of the meeting. In terms of Brown Act, major changes, I don't believe that there have been any major changes that went into effect this year. There have been a few less significant, at least in the kind of the grand scheme of the Brown Act, changes recently, such as the provision that allows members to participate remotely if they are infected with a contagious illness. That's the provision that allows Chair Moore to participate and vote tonight, not under the historic teleconference rules, which require you to post your location and allow public access. But if you declare that you have a contagious illness, you're able to participate remotely. So there have been some more minor changes to the Brown Act. Municipalities have been lobbying for more significant changes to Brown Act to allow wider use of remote meetings. Those and there was some legislation introduced, but that hasn't really made its way through yet. If the board would like a primer or a presentation on the Brown Act, one of my colleagues would be happy to provide that to you. I think some of you have been on this board for a while, including on the PRC, worked with my colleague, Deputy City Attorney Sam Harvey. He's the Brown Act expert in our office and actually married to Caroline, works at the state bar. He'd be happy to provide an update on the Brown Act, so we can agendize that for.
As well as the Roberts rules, whatever issues as far as what we're required.
What do we have to do versus what are we just choosing to do to make the meetings a bit more efficient?
So Brown Act and Robert's rules and
Yeah.
kind of meeting procedures.
Does that take us to new business? Excellent. So I'm gonna hand this over to Jose. It's election time.
Chair and Vice Chair for the 2024 calendar year. Again, we're doing these under section I of PAB standing rules, that section I elections. So again, as we previously noted, at the second meeting, we'll actually be the votings. Additional nominations are allowed. Again, the same process as section 1, where a board can nominate themselves or someone else still applies. The second is required. Each nominee during this meeting will be allowed 2 minutes to express the reason for seeking the position. Again, nominating finds opportunity, it's optional. The board members will have the opportunity to pose questions to each candidate. Once that is done, the presiding chair will call a roll call vote, so this will be Chair Moore, and then announce the winner, except in the following circumstances. The first one, of course, is being only one nominee, if there's only one nominee for a position, the presiding chair may seek or move a vote by acclamation. If a tie occurs among the nominees, the presiding chair will conduct the second round of voting, including any additional nominations. And if the clear winner is still not identified after a second round of voting, the presiding chair will conduct a coin toss to break the tie and determine the vote. The board secretary will assign it. Varies. Of course, and then in terms of our office, we'll be reporting the tally of votes. So, yeah, are there any questions? I know that was fast. Oh, sorry, and of course, this is a reminder to the members of the public who may not have been tuned in. Our current nominees, for chair, we have Chair Moore. For vice chair, we have Board Member Wilson and Board Member. Yeah.
I did, oh. Oh.
Yeah, but okay. With that said, I will take us into the election of chair. Chair Moore, would you like to say, or sorry, are there any additional nominations for the role of chair at this time? Okay, Chair Moore, you do have 2 minutes if you'd like to address the board. Again, you may decline to do so. You currently are the only nominee. Yeah.
Yes, in the interest of brevity, I will take 20 seconds and say I am very honored by my nomination. I hope to provide the type of leadership you need in 2024. And with that, I look forward to our next election.
Now, let's see, well, sorry, there's only one candidate, so we can go on the motion.
So I move that we, by acclamation, vote to approve Chair Moore.
For those motion.
How do I acclaim?
So we'll see with the vice chair now. We do have 2 candidates here. I could start in alphabetical order for 2 minutes. With board member Blackaby if there are no additional nominations for vice chair. Okay, seeing or hearing none, board member Blackaby, if you'd like to give a statement, sure, 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll be brief. I appreciate the nomination by board member Lethwich, and vote of confidence by colleagues. I look forward to the chance to serve as vice chair. I'm interested in serving to help share the responsibility with Chip, take some of the work off his plate and help move the path forward. Since joining the Accountability Board, I've learned a lot about the challenges facing the organization and opportunities to better serve. And I think my skills and experience line up well to serve as vice chair in that capacity. A few reasons. One is I have a great working relationship with Chip. I think I can be an effective partner to help share the load and take some of those items off his plate. 2, I'm a really good problem solver. I've learned how to take a pretty intractable problem and figure out how to break into pieces, solve each piece, and solve a bigger problem in that process. And I think that takes, creativity, persistence, the ability to ask questions, and the ability to work with lots of different people to do that well. 3, I'm results oriented. So I'm not the type of person who wants to speechify. I'm more interested in getting things done and having an impact. I think maybe that comes from my work as a startup founder and entrepreneur. At some point, we got to get things done, and that's my orientation. And 4th, I think I'm an effective relationship builder. And so I think that's crucial for PAB as we're finding our sea legs growing and trying to improve coordination across different stakeholders. So again, I'll just end this and look back in enormous respect for Leah. We worked well together on the budget committee. She'd also be a tremendous choice. So again, I think it's a win-win for the PAB. And I encourage board members to vote your conscience, know our feelings, and I trust the judgment of my colleagues to make a good decision. And I appreciate the nomination. Thank you.
Okay, board member Wilson.
All right, well, that's a tough act to follow. I really want to thank I'm sorry, losing track of what I'm thinking. I'm very thankful for being nominated. I did not expect this early in my tenure as a board member to be nominated for a leadership role. So I'm very appreciative for that vote of confidence. And I certainly have tried to be impactful in my short time on the board. As vice chair, I think I continue in the vein that you see. I'm very focused on trying to figure out how we can be as effective as possible. And our charge and our scope is so broad as outlined in the charter. And I think we're only scratching the surface of how we can achieve maximum impact. And so whether I'm in the vice chair position or not, that's really what I want to focus on. I think similarly, I bring some skill to the table, particularly given I think that I run a very large organization. And so really taking that macro level view on structure, outcome and results is the orientation I bring to the board as well. But I think Brent would be great. And I really feel we have a bounty of riches with this board composition altogether. I'm super impressed by this diverse group, how hard we work, how committed we are, what we are able to achieve even in the face of a lot of obstacles. And I just look forward to continue to helping move us forward and be as effective as possible in regardless of whatever we want. So thank you.
Okay, with that, I will now open it to the board for any questions towards the nominees. No questions?
No questions. That's awkward. Somebody, anybody.
CNN town hall. That's a tough question. That's gonna make me stumble too. Last year, I think I've been on the board for less than 6 months. Yeah. But longer than Brett.
Yeah.
One. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
May.
I have a question for the nominees, if I may, Chair.
Go ahead.
As someone who turned down a nomination because I have other responsibilities, I'm curious what other responsibilities you have and like what your vision is like going forward throughout the year and your engagement with this board.
That's a great question. I have a lot of responsibilities professionally. I am lucky to have all of my kids out of the home, but I have a big job. Part of that impacts how I approach this work. Like, I don't believe we can all do everything, and I've made that comment before. That I think we need to kind of specialize and focus on different areas, and that's how we will be able to maximize our impact. So given that I have a big job, I think I do contribute as much as I can now. I don't know as vice chair that I can just sit here and give significantly more time, but I want to continue to be very thoughtful about where I engage. I volunteered to work on the budget because I know I have something to bring to the table there, and it's important. So I think I continue to do that, but I also want to be responsive to the members and to Chip as the chair, like what do you think it would be most useful for me to do, recognizing that, I do have a day job that to get done.
And it's also similarly, do a full-time job and start up. Co-founder, that keeps me busy. I have 2 kids, that does keep me busy. This is an important function, important role, and I don't do anything just to do it. If I do it, I'm gonna do it well. And so I would take the same view on the vice chair responsibility. And so, yeah, so I mean, it's all about time management. It's all about managing all those responsibilities, and I think, I've proved, I think, through my career, I can do that and make time for this.
I have a question for Vice Chair Harris. What do you see as the biggest challenges and requirements for success in the role as you've experienced?
Well, fortunately for me, Chip was so great. My role was very small as vice president. as vice chair, I'm sorry. But for me, it's really time. It's time management, because like, you know, like Brent, I run a business, so, and that's my full-time capacity right now. But just the time challenge is an issue, because there's a lot of work to be done. And just, you know, having the times to set aside to get the work done has been a challenge, just not even in this capacity, just as a member on the board, so, yeah. Mhm.
All right. Are there any additional questions before we move on to the roll call vote? Okay, so I'll be going in alphabetical order. Just let me know who you're voting for and I'll report it. I just want to say this is the closest I've gotten to a potential tie in terms of.
I was thinking of abstaining just to do the coin flip. I was gonna abstain, but I'll behave. I'll behave.
To avoid any awkwardness post vote as a result of this, that we do this by secret ballot.
So.
Did the rules allow
The
that?
the standing rules say that it is a roll call vote.
We get a legal interpretation?
I personally, I'm not gonna feel offended. I'm totally appreciative of being nominated. I
can do a roll call.
We can change our standing rules though, and in fact, I had mentioned at one of our last meetings that on the mental health advisory board, we changed, and because to avoid some.
Yeah, it is.
So going forward, in future elections.
Oh, you guys don't to that.
Okay, with that said. I'll proceed with the roll call vote again in alphabetical order. Board Member Blackley.
Think carefully. And I will vote for.
Okay. Board Member Calvita.
I'm totally torn. Things are difficult. I don't know, so I think it's an abundance of riches there, and I'm gonna go with seniority. Board Member Wilson.
Okay. Board Member Cayetano.
I also agree that I think both of you would be very great at doing the role. I vote for Board Member Wilson.
Wilson. Vice Chair Harris.
Wilson.
Board Member Leftwich.
My vote is for Board Member Blackaby, although I also think that Board Member Wilson would do a fabulous job.
Board Member Moses.
I have the same opinion of everybody and also the seniority.
Chair Moore.
I'm gonna go Board Member Blackaby on this vote.
Yourself, you win, Blackaby.
That's so awkward, see, we need to change the rules.
Okay, I'll vote for myself.
Okay.
But we should change these rules.
Okay, so Board Member Wilson has just been voted as the vice chair on a 5-3 vote.
Congratulations.
Let's move on.
So Chair, we move on to 10B.
10B,
Yeah.
are we ready? Okay, so this is the recap of the 50th anniversary of civilian oversight, Berkeley celebration, and adoption of resolutions recognizing Barbara Attar, Jim Channon, Maria Tungohan for their efforts and preparations leading to to the event, ODPA. You guys got it.
Well, and the board, meeting member, staff, and everybody who participated, it was, I thought it was a great event, the chair, echoed that it was, or I echoed the chair's sentiments, that it was a good, opportunity to see people coming together for something like this. We do difficult, and, we get too many opportunities sometimes to celebrate some of the achievements, and, hopefully you enjoy yourself. I did want to, wanted to introduce some resolutions to just champion and celebrate some of the individuals. Seats. We did, include the restrictions that in the agenda.
Yes, starting on page 31 of the agenda pack.
Okay. Do we have any of the potential recipients of the honor of the resolution?
No, at the same time, we do not.
Okay, but if I may read it into the record, in the order that they're being presented, page 32, is the first one?
Yes.
Okay, and for members, yes.
Let me just ask a quick question. So Maria, Tangohan,
Yes.
I guess I'm not familiar with, I know she did a great job, but I was under the impression, just on the brief information we were given, that she was a paid consultant. But again, I don't have information, maybe I missed it, but.
Yeah, she was, contracted, the city has an Apple One, staffing firm that we, utilize for, temporary, staffing needs. So we were able to tap into that contract and hire her for that. So she was hired specifically for this special.
Okay.
And just for all members of the public, we did include in the packet a letter that we received from, NACO that acknowledged and commended the work of the city of Berkeley for civilian oversight. So that's there, for public inspection as well. But on page 32, we have the resolution, commending, Barbara Carter, who is, a member of the public before the body. She is a former PRC officer, so the equivalent of record. And she has served, with NAPOS, for many years, contributed greatly to the field. To include, writing the investigation matters that many civil oversight agencies use to put now. So this is a resolution of the Police Accountability Board and the Office of Director of Police Accountability of the City of Berkeley, thanking Barbara Tart for work with civilian oversight in Berkeley and across the nation. Whereas the city of Berkeley recently celebrated the anniversary of civilian oversight milestone that have centered dedication for fostering transparency, accountability, and engagement, whereas the success of the 50th anniversary celebration will be possible through talents and role in this organization, and whereas individual accepted community dedication, devoted 7 years of unwavering service to the city of Berkeley, leaving an indelible mark on the landscape of civilian oversight as a director of the Police Review Commission, and whereas in addition to her local contributions from the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, NAPOS, Board of Directors for 11 years, demonstrating her commitment to advancing best practices and standards in civilian oversight at the national level, and whereas share significant part of the rich history of civilian oversight in the city of Berkeley, 50th anniversary celebration contributes to the collective understanding of the community about the importance and evolution of oversight. Now, it hereby resolved by the Police Accountability Board and the Office of Police Accountability of the city of Berkeley to express their deepest gratitude and appreciation to Barbara Tart for 7 years of unwavering dedication to serve the city of Berkeley. Be it further resolved that the Police Accountability Board and the Office of Police Accountability extend their thanks to Barbara Tart for volunteering to share the history of civilian oversight contributing to the success of the 15th anniversary. Be it further resolved, this resolution be presented to Barbara Tart as a token of sincere appreciation and recognition for this for commitment to police accountability and civilian oversight in the city of Berkeley.
So is there a motion for this one?
Is there a motion to accept the resolution as is, or?
Sorry, who was the?
I did.
Okay.
Second.
Can we move the second resolution also without having to read it aloud?
To what, sorry?
Isn't there a second resolution?
There's three.
Oh, can we move them all without having you read them aloud?
Okay. Oh, shit, that's great.
Okay.
We were contemplating that they be in person along always.
Okay.
But they're not.
Yeah.
The record will reflect.
Okay,
So the motion is to.
move all three.
Can I just, I got one comment about, can I make a comment? So I thought the event went very, very
Can you
well.
speak up a bit? Right here.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, I just wanted to mention that I thought the event went very well, it was very nice. But I was a little taken back that none of the board members were introduced, other than, well, we know that Chip and Kitty, because they had a role on the agenda for the night, but the rest of the board members were never, not really, really acknowledged, and I'm just wondering why? Or is that part of that? I've never been to one before, so I don't know if that's part of the process. Or,
That certainly wasn't part of the process, and it certainly wasn't intentional, and that bring this to my attention. It was my recollection that would have been done on the front end, so I total oversight,
Yeah.
horrible like that, but I sincerely apologize for that, it was not intentional.
You're gonna have to wait till the 60th.
I mean, that's not a big deal. That here, and nobody was introduced or. Well, there was one section where they asked to stand, but then everyone said, no, they're talking about the previous, and so we all sat back down. And nobody said anything else after this, so, because it did say, no, it did say, they're telling us, no, it's for the previous members. So anyway, that's all I'm saying, but other than that, you guys did an excellent job. It was definitely a good.
Good times.
So, board member Harris, I gotta let you know, you guys were supposed to stand at that point and be recognized. It was a miscommunication. We were all supposed to stand at the same time and do introductions. I thought you guys sat down because you didn't want the recognition, because you were the only table that didn't. And I didn't either. I sat down because I knew I was going to stand up later. So we all didn't stand up at that time.
The most extremely minor switch, on page 35. Just the second. Third line from the bottom. Of Berkeley that was switched to that, so. Just as I was scanning. You see that, I think, super tight, so that he grammatical clicked.
Oh, the police, yeah.
I'm sorry, could we repeat who the second was for that motion?
That was me.
Oh. Sorry, I was struggling. So. Okay. Go with a quick roll call vote, Board Member Blackley. Yes. Board Member Caldeira.
Yes.
Board Member Cayetano.
Yes.
Board Member Harris.
Yes.
Board Member Leftwich.
Yes.
Board Member Moses. Yes. And Chair. Was that a yes? Okay, oh, sorry, you're muted. Sorry, it just throws me off, so just switch chairs.
Yes.
Yeah.
You take your role at the end of it.
Yeah, sorry, that was quick. Okay.
Yes. Take me out.
Okay. And with that, Chair, we proceed to item 10C.
Excellent. Discussion and action regarding the 2024 PAB Strategic Planning Session. Agenda. Board Member Leftwich and Board Member Moses, please take it away.
Sure. So on page 42 of your packet is the draft agenda. Board Member Moses and I wanted this to be a pretty action-oriented day. There aren't any team building activities. No one's gonna ask you what your should pay or anything like that. So again, it's pretty straightforward. We welcome any questions or comments. What we really appreciate though is input from the board about the working session at lunch. It's going to be, a working lunch with a training component because we all need that. And so the topics we were kind of playing around with was possibly early warning systems. And what I had envisioned, although I realized we didn't confirm this with Brian Core, who's the facilitator, is whether if it was something like early warning systems, what I would think would be most helpful is if he could provide best practices around the country. So it's not looking at our policy, but it's just what are the best and brightest policies in that area. Something he does have expertise in is the impact of trauma on victims and communities and police officers. And so that's, a topic that would be interesting. We also wondered if it would be appropriate to have the department provide training on anything. They know about this, and they will be invited, but it's really our board meeting and strategy session. But so I'd love to open it up just to the board first to see if people have any questions, concerns about the agenda. And then any thoughts about subject matter for our training session at lunchtime. Yeah.
I'm a big advocate of incorporating history into looking forward, and I think that we could really benefit from understanding the history of policing in Berkeley. And if we had a 30-minute segment on going back into how Berkeley Police Department is formed, how it has evolved over the years, and in conjunction with that, how the PAB and the PRC has worked with them in the past. I think that could be really beneficial for us as we look forward.
It's an interesting idea about the history of the department.
And that would be part of the training, or just a different, like the beginning of the meeting.
It could be at the very beginning, because an introduction section or wherever it fits. I just think that we should understand like what we came out of.
I think it could be part of the training also, the historical component of it. As far as how we've worked with the department, I'm not sure how useful that would be. I mean, I'm going back over oversight, and we, our event recently was focused on the history of oversight in Berkeley, but not so much the history of the department.
I also wonder, given how much action that we want to take, whether that's something that we could, we have to March 2nd is our date, whether we add this to an agenda item for a future meeting to, for example, ask, Captain Tate's been here 25 years, I think, to present a little something on that, or incorporate that into a conversation before the meeting as opposed to using the time of that session.
Also, I want to contextualize policing in Berkeley, but then policing in America. And I think that that's important for understanding what the purpose of what we're doing here is. It doesn't have to be a retreat, but I think that having a shared common understanding of what the history is would be helpful.
Well, I have just something much more tactical than that for the agenda. I thought it looked great, and I feel like you guys did a good job of incorporating feedback you've heard from us. The only thing I want to make sure we have space for is to review our remit per the charter, because as I observed, it's really broad. There's so many things that I think we're actually required to do, and then things that we have the authority to do. And so when we're talking about things like the respective roles and responsibilities, the board and versus ODPA, I think it would be helpful to frame that around the actual deliverables that we have as a body. And understanding what staff deliverables are that are separate and apart and have nothing to do with the PAB. So I just wasn't sure if there was a place where we would explicitly have like, here's the huge body of work that you're responsible for.
You're talking about incorporating the specific provisions of the charter in that section, so specifically.
Roles and responsibilities, yeah.
Right,
So it's
but referencing the charter.
yeah, so
Yes.
it's grounded in.
Yeah.
And both what's what's required and what's permissive. So we really all have a good handle on that.
Sort of framing it as mandated by the charter.
And I'm fine with whatever training. I thought that was useful to give us some training during this, to get a training hour.
Yeah.
I'm fine with whatever topic you come up with. I feel like the history topic you raised is bigger than half an hour. It's a great, meaty discussion. So my only concern is, we would give it short shrift in this, or use a lot of our planning session for that. Especially if you're talking about in the context of policing in America, that's a big topic.
Right.
So,
Maybe done in half an hour.
okay, if it can be done, you know.
Maybe what we can do is reach out to the department to see if they're ready, willing, and able to do something like that. Because if they're not,
I don't think this is a topic for the department.
Yeah,
Oh, you don't?
No, I don't know.
Maybe it's you, as the criminologist.
so who would do the training?
Who?
Yeah, I
Our
mean,
resident criminologist.
it is, you know, speak for Josh, because I'm thinking, but I took his suggestion as something sociological, historical, comprehensive, and this particular police department.
Oh, I see. So who would be the person to do that? Because we better invite them.
If you're interested in carving out 30 minutes, I can find someone who would be willing to zoom in or whatever, it's fine to give us a presentation.
Yeah.
That, and to center Berkeley in the competition. I think that would be useful.
Do
But-
others agree with that? That sounds.
So that instead of the training, that is our training.
That would be the training.
Yeah.
Sounds interesting to me.
Everybody okay with
We
that?
have many great resources at UC Berkeley that specialize in this exact topic, and I'm sure one of them would be ready and willing to give us a presentation. And I know that many board members have different experiences and backgrounds, and I think that we could benefit.
Okay, well, if you could just do that quickly.
Next week.
Okay.
Next Friday, I'll get you a link.
Great.
Awesome. I love it.
What Brian's role in this meeting
Well, yeah, he's the facilitator. He'll move things along, provide, his experience where relevant. But he won't do the training on that. And he does have a lot of expertise around trauma, and wouldn't be surprised if that, who knows? He might slip that in somewhere, but it wouldn't be the specific training. Okay, I guess that's it, unless anybody else has anything to say.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Just for you. Are these 3 items like agenda items for the 1:20 to 3 o'clock session? Or are they like, what are they? I guess is the question.
These were just ideas, so thinking strategically, it kind of jumped out for us as obvious topics, and I know the idea of legislative advocacy has come up in the past, but we were not saying these are our goals necessarily. It's more possible topics, but this is our chance as a board to say whatever we want, so I don't know, we could reword this if it looks like it's too prescriptive or something. Or if you have any thoughts or suggestions, but
Can the official agenda just have the bold titles and that's what's like the posted agenda, and then we have like the facilitator has a working, like to make it more clear that these are just examples. And also this is a Brown Act meeting, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe we don't want to limit we don't want to be seen.
Well, I don't think that having this would limit us under the Brown Act. I mean, this is a strategy session, and the title, looking at strategically our goals, other goals. I don't think we need to worry about that, but maybe it could be viewed as too limiting if we have all these.
I guess I was just worried that these would be perceived as our goals for 2024.
Right.
If it was this.
Right.
I was sort of things.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with them, but I just don't want to.
Yeah.
commit to that for-
Yeah. So maybe we'll just take those
Sure, right,
off.
and then bring them up in that period.
Yeah, or people can bring up whatever they want. This is our brainstorming
Right.
session.
That feeds into the next steps conversation that we have.
Right. Whatever we decide our goals are, how are we gonna get there? And I think it's really important that we come away with this with some specific action items. 'Cause I've been at a lot of retreats and a lot of meetings where people get all fired up and then the help disappears because there aren't specific goals and no one's tasked with doing any specific and there's no timeline. So, the idea was to not let that happen. Yeah.
I appreciate all the work that y'all put into this. It's really good. Yeah.
I think we'll leave it to your point. I think we will leave under like the 10-15, you know, those bullet points, unless you don't think we even have the needs.
Well, I'll defer to you. I think
Okay.
you could do this agenda without any of the bullet points. Personally. And then bullet points you all have and the facilitator has, and we kind of. But I don't care that much.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll talk about it, but certainly we'll delete the specifics under that 120.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're ready to proceed to the next item?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Chair, we are ready to proceed.
Could I ask a question? Is there do we have a per diem allocation for if I were to ask a speaker to come speak on the topic that I was mentioning?
No.
We can make that
Okay,
Oh.
okay,
happen.
okay, I'll talk with you. Thank you. I'll get the best and brightest. Don't worry.
All right, so are we good to move on to agenda item D? 10D? Report on policy complaint number 2023 PR 009. Board Member Calvita?
I've had a chance to read this memo that I put together. You may remember that at our meeting, a policy complaint was brought to us by a member of the public who witnessed something that concerned them. They reported that they'd seen an officer approach an individual who was cycling on the sidewalk. And the officer reported he came up through the bike and backpack on the foot, handcuffed the individual, questioned the individual briefly, and then let them go. And so I volunteered to be a sort of one-person policy complaint subcommittee. And this is what I put together. It's limited to the handcuffing. A piece of this incident. Some people talked last time we looked at this, that there was concern that allegedly 6 patrol vehicles arrived and within the context of overtime and so forth, there was concern about that. But I volunteered to take on the part about the handcuffing and as a use of force so that's what this memo is about. And, it is mostly focused on policy 300, which is the use of force policy that the PRC spent a very long time on, and Chair Creswell has, worked tirelessly on that together with all of us. And, it really is an excellent, use of force policy, I believe. However, I think that in the context of, or, you know, looking at this incident, it became clear to me after reading the use of force policy again, that, it needs some, possibly minor, possibly not minor tweaking. You'll see on the top of page 45 in the packet that within the use of force policy, which is also attached to it, but I just pulled out the parts that were relevant. There's a continuum of force that goes from, it's a little bit awkward, it goes from level 2, because level 1 is the officer present, and that's no force is used. So level 2 is verbalization, where force is not physical, but the officer may in fact increase the volume of their commands. And the next level, which is the second level of force, use of force, consists of weaponless defense, in which the officer uses bodily force to gain control of the situation. This includes, among other things, control holds. Control hold not being defined as, or rather handcuffs not being included in control holds. Also punches and kicks to restrain an individual. And then level 4 goes to let lethal force, and finally lethal force. Section 300 talks about restraint and control devices and stipulates that we should look at policy 302 to see how handcuffs are managed in policy. Policy 302 makes it very clear that handcuffing an individual is to be taken seriously and only should be used to ensure officer safety. There's something there too about reporting and so forth. So it struck me as very odd that use of force is not, that handcuffing is not included anywhere in the use of force policy, whereas a verbal command is, especially in the context of 302, which talks about handcuffing as something to be taken very seriously. And so you can see here my recommendation. Turn the page for my recommendation, page 46. I would recommend deleting handcuff or restrain from the sentence defining force. The sentence defining force, it is not a use of force when a person allows themselves to be searched, escorted, handcuffed, or restrained. It seems to me a little bit arbitrary to say that handcuffing is not a use of force when all those other things are, such as a command. Yeah.
So thank you for looking at this, and I agree it needs clarification. I was on the use of force subcommittee, and I believe we included the language in handcuffing, the current language. It's not a use of force if the person allows themselves. So the idea was, you know, that they say, fine, I'm going to handcuff you, fine, you know, here are my, but I think that the issue is that handcuffing probably should have been referenced under level 3 specifically. So I don't think, personally don't think the answer is to delete that, because I don't think that's a use of force if the person allows themselves. I think it is a use of force though if they resist and the officer needs to use force to handcuff the person. So, and I think this probably, because it's going to be a change to the use of force policy, it's going to be a big deal. And so I'm not sure we can do this tonight, but I'd be happy to look at it, spend some time looking at it. But that was when I read this, my thought was, well, wasn't the intent when we wrote this. Wasn't to completely take handcuffing out of any scenario. But it isn't, now that you raise it, yeah, it's not well crafted. I mean, it could use more clarification, but I think the clarification isn't deleting that that sentence. I think it's adding something.
Oh, well. Allowing oneself to be handcuffed strikes me as more intrusive, more of a use of force than simply receiving a verbal command. You know, the first use of force that is mentioned in this policy is a verbal command. And then from there it goes to kicking. So I was recommending that there be, my alternative recommendation was that there be a level between those two that is allowing oneself to be handcuffed, because I'm quite sure that in the presence of a police officer, most people will allow themselves to be handcuffed out of simple
Deference.
deference
And the power
and
dynamic.
intimidation.
Yes, those are the.
I think it's a weird concept to say it's voluntary,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
because what else are you gonna do?
yeah,
right.
exactly.
Voluntary is probably the wrong word, but allowing oneself to be handcuffed. I certainly would
Well, when you,
allow myself.
But I'm sure there are people who won't, who will
Right.
not.
yes,
Definitely, definitely, but it strikes me as quite odd to have, you know, these verbal commands be a use of force, and then it goes from there to control holds and kicks. And so maybe we need, you know, this was my first look at it and scrutinizing these two policies in the context of this reported incident. So I don't know if we need to have, maybe I didn't mention that at committee, but no, I mean, no. It seems to me, I mean, I thought this could be a quick fix within. Obviously, we'd have to go forward. We'd have to bring in the police department and so forth. But I was seeking agreement amongst ourselves that this is an odd omission.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your point is valid, because there's a lack of clarity as to how handcuffs are considered. I do, to your point, I do think that I would want to understand how it's interpreted by the police force, because, you know, I can also read this and the levels of force as narrowly focused on the implementation of one's authority against an individual, and the difference between voluntarily handcuffing an individual and somebody not volunteering to be handcuffed is the rear wrist lock, and that's the use of force action. And then if we then, you know, look at handcuffing, does that mean that there's specificity around placing somebody in a police, in the back of a police car, or you know, somebody voluntarily, you know, with all of the additional steps that might be involved in restraining an individual. Spelling those out, I guess, are you thinking that we are explicitly identifying the handcuff action as different than, for example, putting somebody in the back of a police car?
Well, that's a good point, but
Maybe none
Well,
of
I
it's
believe
voluntary.
Captain, maybe we should ask Captain Tate, she's here, if there's a clarification. Maybe we should ask her.
Which piece are you looking for clarification on? The active handcuffing?
Yeah, so, you know, when you look at the use of force policy and the absence of handcuffing in that use of force policy, what's the reasoning behind that separation?
So we discussed this for numerous hours in our use of force policy review and development with the PRC. And as a use of force instructor, I can share that the act of handcuffing in and of itself, I can tell someone, look, you have a warrant for your arrest, turn around, I'm going to put handcuffs on you, and they can turn around and be completely compliant, and I can put handcuffs on them and put them in a vehicle with no resistance whatsoever. So the idea that we would have officers complete a use of force report every single time we arrest someone, absent any sort of resistance from them, which would trigger other levels that would, a control hold, level 1 or level 2, depending on the severity of the resistance, then the use of force report is being triggered by the input that we're getting from the individual because they have a say in that process. So because by and large, we're applying handcuffs without a control hold, without any sort of resistance from the individual, we would then be asking our officers to do a use of force report every single time we put handcuffs on. So we elected to not include that as a use of force. Someone is being cooperative because, again, if they then resisted or there was any other level of force used, then that would trigger a level 1 or level 2 reporting threshold.
Can I ask a clarification question on that? Do you officers fill out a use of force report every time they issue a verbal command?
No.
So are there only certain levels that require a use of force report?
Yes, that's all highlighted in our policy, which you guys should have.
Yeah, so would it be possible to include it as a separate level that doesn't trigger that sort of report in those specific instances? Or would that be contrary to the purpose of what we're talking about?
Well, I guess I don't understand the rationale behind it.
Okay.
So if we voted to move forward with the recommendations in the memo, what would the next steps be procedurally? What happens? This is really for staff. Is there a process that we just send those over to the department and they do with it what they will?
Yeah, this is an area, but it's not strictly regulated policy. What the department wants to, there's already existing policy, as opposed to department. It's not as legally regulated as policy. So we would transmit your recommendation to the police department to see what they respond.
So, Captain Tate, I'm looking at the use of force policy and the reporting levels. So level 1 reporting level, it looks to me like the things that trigger a level 1 reporting are control holds, leverage, grab, body weight, and takedown. So am I not correct in thinking that anything less than those things don't trigger a report?
That is correct.
So if we were to have handcuffing in here, it wouldn't, voluntary handcuffing or however we want to say it, that would not, we could do that in a way that doesn't trigger reporting requirement, just as the verbal commands don't trigger a report.
Well, it doesn't report right now.
Right, that's the way it is now.
Yeah, so doesn't trigger anything right now.
It's not in the policy.
I think what you're speaking of is the use of force continuum. As you're describing the officer's presence, there's no force used, right? So we're there. We're being professional and non-threatening. That's the officer presence. Verbalization, there's no physical force used. we can issue in the use of force continuum, in the policy, it says with verbalization, we can issue calm, non-threatening commands such as let me see your identification and registration, can increase your volume and shorten your commands in an attempt to gain compliance. Those things might be stop or don't move. So that's a part of the use of force continuum, and that's engaging with people. So I'm not sure where the commands question came in.
I don't want to speak for board member Hellier, but it seems that there can be inclusion of voluntary restraint in the instance that you were suggesting on the same level as a verbal command like that. So it doesn't trigger the sort of reporting mechanism that you were mentioning in those specific instances. That's what I guess which doesn't now, right? But I guess we were carving out a different use of handcuffs that is not that voluntary use, that is not that type of voluntary restraint where it might trigger. So it's separating the two types of handcuffing where it's not right now.
So the difference between something that is voluntary and something that is not voluntary, which would trigger a reporting requirement, lies in any resistance the officer receives from the individual trying to be handcuffed.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's like a philosophical difference as to whether there is a concept of voluntary handcuffing. And that's just, I guess what I would say, I really appreciated the memo. I thought it was very well done and clear. I'm ready to move forward with your recommendations. If they're just going to the department, and the department can do with them what they will, which what it sounds like. It doesn't seem like the consequences are that significant. Certainly, they will have the opportunity to have input. There could be further dialogue. So it made sense to me because I think this is a little specious, this idea that you're voluntarily getting handcuffed, like I'm going to go buy a candy bar, and I'm also choosing to get handcuffed. Yeah.
And if I may, just to, I was generally speaking of all policies, but actually use of force. There is a section in the policy review nothing section, 300.13, that says this policy shall be regularly reviewed and updated to reflect development practices and procedures, at least annually. The Berkeley Police Department and the Police Review Commission shall convene to review and update the use of force policy to reflect development practices and procedures for SB 230. So even if you decide, whatever you decide today, you still get another bite at the apple later on annually as contemplated here.
Because where that was written, I keep my computer died, but didn't it say that had just been done, like early January 2024? Whatever you're reading, the last review.
We have not, I don't think, this board has
I
not.
thought I saw a date. Okay.
No, I'm confused about, I mean, maybe we can put this on for another time when we're reviewing the policy. Another time, I don't know, but I'm confused about the reporting aspect of it, because I'm looking at the reporting levels. And level 1 kicks in with a pain compliance technique or leverage or grab or body weight and takedown and so forth. It seems to me that we could craft the use of handcuff in a way that does not trigger as a reporting requirement, because I definitely see what you're saying, Captain, in terms of that would be, you know, every time you handcuff somebody, you need to write a report. But from what use of force reporting levels, it looks to me like there would have to be greater force used to trigger a report.
I think this is a bigger conversation than, I don't, at least I'm personally not prepared to vote on this, or if I'm voting on it, I'm rejecting it. I think this is a big deal,
So let's put it on for another day, but you have the memo and you have the policies in this packet.
I wonder if we can make a motion to formalize the review of the use of force policy as we are supposed to do annually, and we'll kind of have this be part of that
Yeah.
broader discussion, so maybe we can decide on a specific date or format in which. we do that.
Together, and I think it would be useful if we could, either representative department,
100%.
which is how we do
Exactly.
policy.
Yeah, I will say that, Captain Tate, thank you for engaging with us. It was really helpful to hear your perspective. And I do agree that we shouldn't be triggering the report levels for the types of instances that you're mentioning. So I think this back and forth is very productive, and I thank you for being here and commenting on them.
Absolutely, and if
Thank
I
you for engaging.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to add one thing. One question was asked, and I appreciate the process and asking about handcuffing and engaging in, policy review and these things. And one thing that we talk about is the staffing crisis that we have and the amount of work that we put on our officers. And when we talk about the impacts of triggering a reporting requirement for something like handcuffing, that is a lot of work. So I just want to put that out there as we're talking about recruiting and retention and what can we do to keep our cops and recruit more officers. Sometimes it's little things like these that we don't necessarily consider the impacts that it's going to have on our line level officers doing this work every single day. So I want to say I respect you all. I appreciate this work. And I just ask you to consider that as we move forward in these discussions.
I think we are, right?
We all agree that.
Of course. Thank you for your insight. We appreciate that. Let's move on. Let's move on. We have. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
No, I'm sorry. Can you say it again? It was going in and out.
To make a motion to formalize the use of force review and do it in such a fashion that it is in partnership with the police department, because to your point, I don't think any of us have considered or understood the implications of the reporting requirements that are associated with handcuffing, and we desperately need that input and collaboration to make sure that we are having these discussions as informative as possible. So if we do make that motion, is that something that the police can attending and supporting that?
I will certainly share that with the chief, and we can get back to you on what that would look like.
So then make a motion to formally to set a formal date for reviewing the use of force annually as a board.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, proceeding with the roll call. Chair Moore?
I'm sorry. Can you read me the motion one time just so I'm clear on what we're voting on here? It's all me. I can't hear.
The motion to review the policy for the police department. Can I ask exactly like what that entails? I guess. I don't actually have.
I think to set a date with the police department to annually review the use of force.
Yes, so it's a committee.
That requires a commitment.
Did you catch that?
I believe board member Moses asked for a subcommittee to be created unintentionally, or is that true? Are we doing a yearly review?
So, and I think the motion is to schedule with the police department, the meeting as required under BPD policy 300.
Correct.
Um, yeah, yes, yes.
Are you able to propose a different motion that would trigger the action? I don't know. I agree with board member Wilson's point, like, if it simply sends our proposal to the department, we're effectively doing the same thing. Yeah, I guess it's where I'm thinking.
I think though the difference is that right now they did a sort of piecemeal with people. It was triggered by a particular event. What the policy is suggesting here that in full, should be to make sure that it's updated with the current trends field. So that's what the meaning of board member Moses is.
Right. When's the last time we did that?
I don't have.
Schedule it soon, the first.
Okay, so I second this version.
Okay, I was, Vice Chair Harris,
Yes.
Board Member Calavita,
Yes.
Board Member Lopez,
Yes.
Board Member Wilson,
Yeah.
Board Member Blackleads, Board Member Cayetano,
Yes.
and Board Member Hayes.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yeah.
And practically, at least, the director can work that.
Sounds like we can proceed to the next item. Chair, we're ready to fire that. The agenda, item 10E, presentation of new ODPA policy for 2024 PR 001 was postponed to a later date.
To allow the plan to.
Yes. Chair Moore, item 10F is the discussion and action regarding the Berkeley Police Department's MOUs with other agencies.
I'm sorry, one more time, Jose, I just got your sound back. Can you, repeat?
Yeah.
Nothing. I'm sorry, I've lost you. I can't, the microphone isn't working.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
We're doing item 10, the discussion and action.
Oh, excellent. Okay, great. So you guys, can you hear? All right, perfect. So this was the issue I brought up earlier with Captain Tate. This was because of the mutual assistance and mutual aid agreements that we have with Cal and Cal Police, and also with other police departments within the area. According to the charter, we're supposed to know about every MOU and every agreement with every local, state, and federal agency that comes into the city of Berkeley. So we have not been doing that work since the adoption of Charter II. So we're in non-compliance as far as I'm concerned. And I don't put that on just us. I don't put that on just the police department, but also the city attorney's office. And this is aligned with something else that we were speaking about what our responsibilities and priorities were. And you wanted to discuss them within the time in our March 2nd event or March 3rd event. That is something I believe we should charge with the city attorney's office. They should be on top of what we are charged with and what our priorities are and what is in compliance more than anybody else. So for 4 years, we haven't seen a MOU, no mutual aid and assistance agreements. nothing with any state, local, or federal agencies, nor have we adopted any kind of SOPs, protocols in order, or guardrails or frames in order for us to do so. We basically not paid attention to this part of the charter, and it's unacceptable. So in order for, and this is why now when people are saying, what about your accountability and oversight with things that are happening in Berkeley? And we're not able to respond because we weren't made aware or within the loop. So I would like to make sure that we get in the loop. I've extended an invitation to sit down with the chief. I'd like to sit down with the city attorney's office. I'd like them to compile the list of what we are not only our priorities, but what we are specifically charged with, what the police are specifically charged to produce and do by law. I'd like that all cleared up and straightened out so we all know where we stand and what's expected of us within the charter. Anybody else's thoughts? I don't know if I'll hear you, but I'd love to share.
Does this ask the city attorney or the city manager?
All right.
What do you, Chair, what are you asking for?
I'm asking for the city attorney to make it very clear what our priorities are, what we are charged with within the charter. The same things that we wanted to discuss on our day event with Brian Core are the things I think the city attorney's office needs to clarify for us once and all. We are not in compliance with the charter because we were not made aware of the mutual assistance, mutual aid, any of the MOUs, any of the agreements with outside agencies like we're supposed to by the charter. I'm saying, hey, we need to take these steps in order to be in line with the law. And so do the police. Is that clear? Am I clearer? If not, I'm happy to go deeper.
I just wonder if not the, first of all, I don't think the city attorney's office can set our priorities. I think
No,
we have
but
to set
I'm
our.
not a priority when I'm saying what we're charged with. What legally we have to do by law. Not the things that we might ambiguously, but the things that we must do. We shall do.
So I think we could ask for a legal opinion on that. I also think we could ask staff to delineate that, because I think it's a reasonable expectation that staff can analyze the charter, and maybe what their work product, they can send to the city attorney for review. But I guess I'm saying, I agree that needs to get done. I was a little thrown off by the prioritization. We do need to know what to do and miss it. And it's done. I would have assumed staff would take the first crack at that, but I don't know how things work here.
Yeah, see, for me, and this is my opinion, a staff could spend time developing beautiful work product and draft eloquent prose. However, if no one picks it up and if it's not agreed upon by the other stakeholders, it gets thrown in a pile. And if there's no definitive agreement about what responsibilities and roles are between the different agencies and groups, where we have this ambiguity within the charter that lets things fall to the wayside. And for 4 years, for us to be in non-compliance with a part of the charter, it's kind of a big deal.
My question, with mutual aid, it's been agreed to in that time period. So one thing is, have there been new ones? Because again, it's like we're only about look at all the existing MOUs and all that stuff. But I guess the question is, in that time period, have there been any new MOUs that are into that we didn't see? Right? We still haven't. We don't know.
Well, do the contracts like that we've been emailing with the city manager's office about on the budget side, do those fall under this?
So this is 3A2 in the charter. Review and recommend for city council approval all agreements, letters, memorandum, policies which express terms and conditions of mutual.
Anything and everything.
Those may not be the contracts that I'm thinking of may not be. Yes.
You clarify, Chairman Moore, so there's the conversation that I think is suited for our strategic policy meeting and having some work done ahead of time to define the variety of areas that are mandated within our charter that we should be aware of and having input from the city attorney's office. That's one set of work that I think we've sort of danced around for several months and hope to clarify at the strategic meeting. The other piece is 4 areas that are clearly defined, like being informed about your point of memorandums of understanding. Are we failing to be informed? Or are there areas that are clearly part of our charter that are not, that we are not having the stakeholder follow through for? It sounds like you want to talk about that second piece.
Those are both pieces. These are both issues that they seem like they're parallel, but they have an impact. This is impactful. You've got both my arguments, but they both lead to the same point, and that is if we're under serving our community by not, following through our transparency and oversight job here. We're supposed to know we're supposed to know about Cal and the city's agreement for policing. We don't know what our agreement is with the highway patrol. We've never seen it. We don't know any of these contracts. The only time we were made aware was it El Cerrito and the drone incident? And that's the only time afterwards, after the MOU, was in question, were we made aware of it. So we haven't been aligned with the charter and with the law since the beginning of the Police Accountability Board. We need to fix that. We have to fix it. We have to come in line.
So let's see that part of that is us as well as the board. Because it's in the charter, so we have to make sure that we're following up and that we know those lines that we need to be, diligent about receiving that data or getting the data. So I think that we have to take some responsibility on this as well and make it happen. If we know that that's part of our responsibility.
I guess I'm not, I feel like this is exactly what we would be doing at our retreat. And this is what I mean about like divide and conquer. We cannot all be tracking everything. But if we understand like this is what we're required to do, this is permissive, and like how are we going to structure ourselves to accomplish all this work, which would include the accountability measure and what staff's role in that in helping us to exercise oversight. Like I think that's a discussion we can have. I think the question is to prepare for that retreat. What do we need? Do we need a city attorney's opinion, which I think is what our chair is asking for? Do we need just staff to tee up this covers? Here's our review of the charter. Here's mandatory. Here's permissive. I think the chair is asking for the city attorney to do a formal opinion. And I just don't know if that can be done in time for our retreat. I think that'd be nice. Great.
I think they should have already been working. I mean, James can speak to this, but I think they already have an outline of what they believe our powers and capabilities are. We need to go ahead and take a look at that and figure out where we agree, where we're aligned, where we're not aligned, and start doing this work. I understand about we have our retreat, and our retreat day is going to be where we can reflect and really dig in. But what I'm saying is, because of People's Park, this was brought to our attention. We weren't made aware of some of these MOUs and these agreements, but we should have been. So there's a level of accountability that I'm taking right now, saying, hey, this was something that us as stakeholders, we should be made aware of. And at the same time, we have to bring everybody else along and say it's time to get aligned with the charter.
Putting aside the city attorney's interpretation of the charter, is it your opinion that we should be made aware of all the city's mutual aid agreements that they currently have right now, and we weren't made aware in 2020 when the board was instituted. Is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
Yes, 100%.
Because, you know, at the agency, and we had new responsibilities when the board was instituted in 2020 to be made aware of those specific memoranda. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, thank you guys.
Yes.
Sharon, that you and the director amend to the city attorney and city manager citing this part of the charter and your request, demand, whatever, that we, the PAB, receive these MOUs.
I second that.
Love it. Roll call.
Okay, so the motion and the second, we'll move on to roll call vote. Board Member Blackley,
Yes.
Board Member Calavita,
Yes.
Board Member Cayetano,
Yes.
Vice Chair Harris,
Yes.
Board Member Woodward,
Yes.
Board Member Moses,
Yes.
Chair Moore.
Yes.
Resolved how we are going to get this articulation of mandatory versus permissive scope of the path in time for us to review it at the retreat.
I think the city attorney's office has done quite an analysis of what we're about to do.
But I'm talking about something different. What I've seen, it does not cover what I'm talking. Like, here's what you're required to do, review MOUs. That I think the permissive might be the budget that we're doing. And there's like two categories. Required permissive, not, the thing I've seen from the city attorney is more about this issue of our independence, our ability to independently initiate an investigation. That's not what
And about some of those requirements that we just discovered might not be here, they could be in some like the use of force policy. We know that we're supposed to be reviewing these force policy every year, it's not, sure, it's something else. But that's
another issue.
is that what are we legally obligated to do? What is our requirement to your point? Some of them may be in the facilities, so we just don't know that.
Excellent point.
Yeah. That's an easy spot.
So I think the question is, some things do. Staff, do you prefer to take that and figure out it to make the request of the city attorneys? I just want to make sure we get that going in a time.
And I think, sorry, is also go forward versus. In fact, that's the other important thing I'm seeing a little bit, because it's like, again, go forward, question is anything. On the charter, we have an obligation to do and recommend whether to approve it. The question is on all the other stuff that's been in place, because some of these other things have been in place for 8 years or whatever. Like, what is it? We can review those at any time, right? So to me, there's a question between all the stuff that's been in place. And anything needs the attention.
And is the argument that the mutual aid agreement falls under that historical category, even though it's a current event?
That I don't.
We don't.
Sorry, you trying.
I think
Yeah.
it's a bit of a secondary question. The first question is, what are we required? And then it's like, okay, there might be 10 things that we've been required to do that we haven't been doing. So we aren't gonna go retroactive on all of the stuff, but I think that's secondary.
That's fair, yeah, but. I mean, we can boil the ocean and look at everything. You know, but for sure. Yeah, we should see anything. But
I'm in favor of asking staff to maybe like a week before the retreat, 2 weeks before the retreat, to make a list of what they think is mandatory and what they think is permissive, for that list to be comprehensive on the mandatory side, maybe not as comprehensive on the permissive side, or, you know, but definitely comprehensive on the mandatory side. Yeah. Is that possible?
That's fair.
Okay.
I think it would also be just a very useful thing for us all to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gonna be daunting.
Yeah.
I would say, you charge a lot of things with. There's A lot of stuff we control off, that's a lot of challenge for us, for the board, power, duties. Yeah, it's kind of.
Yeah, but that'd be great to have, so.
Yeah.
I make a motion for that.
I'll second.
Motion.
And I think also we could have materials related to the retreat that are meeting beforehand or as soon as possible, rather than the day of the retreat. You know, it'll help us all prepare to see things in advance.
This will make our roles and responsibilities by the conversation so much more productive.
My motion is for them to give it to y'all 2 weeks before. I don't know if I'm allowed to do it. Or a week before, whichever there is reasonably possible.
Okay.
I don't even know if we're allowed to do that, suggest a time frame.
If we're allowed to,
Suggest a time
We'll
frame.
figure it out. Our roles and
Oh,
responsibilities.
That's right. That's one of the.
I know, yeah.
you may suggest that.
It's allowed.
I know, yeah.
No, on the time frame though, because it is technically Brown Acted retreat, you at least get it 72 hours.
Okay, well.
So
We're here, in the spirit of law. So maybe we'll.
okay, so proceed with the roll call vote on the motion.
On the motion, can you clarify the motion?
Pardon?
Can you clarify the motion?
Yes, on the motion to request a memo PA outlining the responsibilities based on the charter requirement before the retreat.
And mandatory responsiveness is important. It's the issue.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Board Member Blackley?
Yes.
Board Member Palladino? Yes. Board Member Cayetano?
Yes.
Vice Chair Harris?
Yes.
Board Member Leftwich?
Yes,
Board Member Moses?
Yes.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
And.
Yeah.
And then just to clarify separately, on this particular point of mutual aid conversations, my understanding is Chair Moore's point that that is a clear mandate and a requirement that is not being currently fulfilled by the respective parties that are required to inform us. So do we have any action to change that other than, I guess the plan right now is to throw the memos and the other.
Yeah.
Did we vote on that one already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Talk about that. I don't know if we know, because we don't know if it's been an email. So,
Right.
part of regular.
They changed anything.
okay.
Alright. Chair item 10D.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
10D, the last item.
Yeah,
Leah, you're up.
Better meeting.
I didn't know it to be agenda. I would like to.
You want to
Second.
No interest in spending time with this right now, but do people have to agree to look for another date? We have to vote on, do you have a proposal? Another? No, are you gonna ask for?
Well, I mean, we could do that. The date that was worked around one federal holidays and then of course all the significant holidays. But need to the standard of the second possible. Potential date that could work would be moving it up the date a week to February 7th, which is the Wednesday before, and still keep us in our general, I guess, every other week meeting date.
Couldn't we just do the 12th, the 13th or the 15th?
that would be better for me. I'm not available on the 7th. Just saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can do
You do the 15th either.
I can do it.
If it doesn't work, just proceed.
Sure.
You won't be there. Yeah, the 18 meetings.
Yeah.
So you all just keep.
Yeah, potentially cancel as well. But if we have any
I would think the turn on camera.
I would vote.
Got a lot to
There
do.
will be tactical, just throwing that, because we mentioned closer to the, downtown town, which is for few weeks in between, but we'll send the group.
And is there a motion to reschedule instead of the doodle poll?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so. Where's my notes?
Yes.
Yes.
For Cayetano?
Yes.
Vice Chair Harris?
Yes.
For Ludwig?
Yes.
For Moses?
Yes.
Chair.
He says yes.
You're muted, Chair.
Sorry, yes.
And.
Yeah.
Motion carries, and send around the doodle poll. Okay. With that said and done, now proceed to item 11, which brings us to public comment. Speakers that are physically present would like to speak. Okay, we'll set it at time.
Thank you. Try not to talk too much. I think I have to agree with the commission member that whether the being handcuffed was ever voluntary, and having someone in front of you right now who has been arrested over 30 times. I've never once been asked, do you want to put these bracelets on? They were always put on me. It's not a voluntary thing at all. And with all due respect, you put that forward as someone who sounds like they have never been arrested, never been handcuffed. Now, when you've been arrested and handcuffed enough, when your hands turn blue, when they're on so tight you're bleeding from the handcuffs, I didn't ask for that. This happened many times. This happened by the UC police. This happened by Oakland police, Berkeley police. Yeah, way back when during People's Park in '91. I think if it's on the belt and it has to be reported if the nightstick is brandished, if the pistol is brandished, if everything else is brandished, why should not handcuffs being put on somebody be considered brandished and have to be reported too? That can be abused as heck. I've seen African-American kids put in handcuffs, sit on a curb way back when, just because they were Black youth. They were handcuffed because the cop used it as an excuse, say, oh, I felt threatened. Yeah, right, bullshit. Not saying that every officer will abuse that, but some will. And it needs to be reported when they use it, who they use it on, and is there a basis for that? Whereas there's been a bias shown. Berkeley Techscape put up at Berkeley Cop Watch has shown that there is a bias in policing. And probably there's more and more people of color being handcuffed than white people. You can bet on it. That just happened. That's racism. That's how racism works. So I would suggest, I was told by a biracial woman friend today, said, you're a white guy, you get away with stuff. I said, I don't get away with stuff. He said, maybe you don't get away with stuff politically, this, that, the other, but you don't get harassed because of the color of your skin. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. And she looked up on me when I agreed I was right. She was right. But all this need to be taken into consideration. There's cultural bias, even in artificial intelligence, because there are people that program it who are biased. So everything is coming up a little bit jaded, and all of this needs to be kept in mind. So I would say every time they would put out the cuffs, threaten people with cuffs, It should be recorded, just to keep a record of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment from those present? Okay, seeing hearing none, I'll now move on to our virtual attendees. If you'd like to provide public comment, please use the raise hand icon. Okay, I see one hand raised, Mr. Lippman. You have permission to speak.
Okay, thank you. I want to touch on three issues if I can: the regulations, the handcuffs, and mutual aid. Regulations is a very difficult subject to address. It's really an unfortunate delay, this 18 months and counting. The issue of protracted meet and confer is a long-standing one. If not for another 18-month delay in 2018, we would have had Measure II on the ballot in 2018 rather than 2020, and lost 2 years there. That was the only impediment in those 2 years. Today, another meet and confer is preventing the full exercise of civilian oversight. Board members are right to raise the issue of impasse. At least in public session, the answer you were given, I don't think is satisfactory. In fact, meet and confer, while it is a negotiation, is not obliged to end in an agreement. It's an airing of views. In the end, and it can be very quick, in the end, the legislative body has to make the policy decisions. And meet and confer cannot be used to indefinitely block civilian oversight. One final point on this, it's a great example of the need for independent counsel for this board. It's an example of a conflict of interest that is not a personal one, but it is institutional. If the city manager, the police department, and the council are the city attorney's clients, it's difficult for the PAB to also be their client. I recommend the board request of the city attorney, outside counsel be retained promptly to clarify these questions. And if the city attorney does not support the request, that the board or board members act to engage pro bono counsel to clarify the limits of meet and confer. With regard to handcuffs, this issue is not about people who are being arrested. Russell Bates is correct. There's great racial discrimination in this matter. It's routine for African Americans to be handcuffed while they're being simply questioned at all. And I can tell you that does not happen to me. So this is something that racial justice has to be considered when you look into it. Finally, on the mutual aid agreements, this process is well laid out. It's not that complicated. Talk to anyone who was on the PRC for a few years. It's all in there. And in fact, when you don't have it for 1 year, even not multiple years, but for 1 year, the city is in a liability because of the law that says every 12 months, without council reapproval, all these agreements are absolutely null and void. Now, I don't know if the council is doing it without talking to the PAB. If they are, that violates your charter. If they're not doing it at all, the council could be in big trouble having and the police department and the whole city organization, because this goes back to 1973. There was a separate initiative on the ballot which passed. This is voter approved. That within every 12 months, all of these agreements have to be reapproved. And I don't even think you need the city attorney for this. The staff needs to make a ruling that we're going to reinstitute that process, and then you get the packet, this voluminous packet from the police department, and you review whichever ones you wish to review and approve the rest. Good luck with that. Thanks.
You. At this time, are there any other virtual attendees that would like to provide public comment? Chair, at this time, we have no additional hands.
That
With
would
that
take,
said-
I was just gonna say, that would take us to closed session.
Okay, at this time, we are going to close session. So we'll be pausing the recording, and those not part of
One, we're live.
And this brings us out of closed session to agenda item 13, announcement of closed session actions. The board has found to sustain the findings of the ODPA. And now I'm asking for agenda item 14, a motion to adjourn. Anybody? I'm guessing I got a motion in a second, and yeah, all right. Good night, everybody. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you in person.